In this video, we're going to build our own survey builder app, just like SurveyMonkey, without writing a single line of code using a tool called Bubble. Now, before I say another word, let me show you a quick preview of exactly what we're going to build throughout this course. Over in a preview of our SurveyMonkey clone, we can see that we are currently on the dashboard where we can start our journey as a user for our survey application. We are given a few options here. We can choose to create a new survey which we can build from scratch. We can also choose to view an existing build which is in the status of draft, which are in progress. Or we can choose to see our published surveys to allow our users to analyze the results of those responses. For this demonstration, I'm going to create a new survey from scratch. When we click this Start from Scratch button, we are given the option to give our survey build a title. Let's call this Ice Cream Survey. I'm going to hit Create Survey, and then we'll add another build to my list, and it will navigate me to the build page for this particular survey. Now on this page, I am given a few options right off the bat to make some changes. I can choose to rename my survey if I like. I can also choose to change the image here just to allow my users to create some custom branding for this particular survey. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to change this image here. So now my image is changed to an image of some ice cream. I can then choose to save that and save my changes and my custom branding to this survey. As you can see, I'm currently in the design phase of this survey build, and I can choose to either add some new questions to my survey here or make some changes to existing ones. I can choose to add questions to my survey simply by clicking these buttons on the left here, and these are the options of the question types that I can choose from for my survey. This question 1, for example, I have chosen a short answer question, which will be a single line input that I can give my answers for. So here is where I would ask a question which has a bit of a short response. So for example, here I can say, what do you like most about ice cream? Once I've set my question text, I can choose then to add a new question to my survey. This is now question 2, and then I can, firstly, I will have to choose the option for the type of question that I want to choose. Here, let's say, for example, we want to add a long answer question. Here we'll say, why do you like ice cream so much? This will allow our respondents to give a bit of an extended response or a long answer to this question. We can then add another question, but here let's add it from the left of our page. Let's add a multiple choice question. Let's here ask our respondents, which flavor of ice cream do you like? And for our multiple choice questions, we can allow our users to select multiple answers. So here, let's give the options of just simply vanilla. Let's add another answer choice. Let's give the option for strawberry. And lastly, let's give the option of chocolate, if I spell it correctly. And then we can say that yes, they are the 3 options that I want to give, and my users can select multiple of these options. So they can choose vanilla and strawberry, or all 3 if they like. Next, let's add a drop-down question type. Here we can say, what time of day do you eat ice cream? Here, for example, we do only want our respondents to select one option. That's why we are choosing the drop down. So let's say morning. Hopefully no one selects morning, afternoon, or evening. Here we are only allowing our respondents to select one option. And then lastly, let's add a 1 out of 10 rating question where we are saying, what do you rate ice cream? Here we are allowing our respondents to select a number from 1 to 10 to rate this question. I will quickly note that our users can, if they want to make a change here, they can go back and make changes to each individual question. If they instead want to say not evening, they want to say nighttime, they can make that change there. They can also make a change here. If they instead want to say that they want to write caramel, they can make their change there as well. Here we have arrived at the point where we are happy with our survey. The build looks good. We have added all of our questions. I want to then preview what it might look like if I was a respondent. So here I can move on to the next section of my journey, which is to preview and publish my survey, or I can click the preview button here to run a preview of my survey. So here I can see that I can see my nice image, I can see the title. What do I like most about ice cream? I can say it's awesome, and then I can go next question, and it will load up my next question type. Why do you like ice cream so much? I can give an answer there. I can then move to the next question. I can choose multiple responses here. I can then go next question again. I can choose an option. I can choose maybe afternoon. And then lastly, I can choose to rate my ice cream. So as the user, as the creator of my survey, I've just previewed what our respondents will see. I'm happy with the build. I'm ready to then publish this to the world. So at the moment, our survey is only in the status of draft because it is in the build stage. If I do go ahead and hit publish, I can then choose to make adjustments to the slug or the live link of my survey. I'm happy with ice cream survey there. I'm then going to choose to publish this, and I'm then going to navigate to a new page where I can find my live link. Now here I can copy this link. I will then want to go ahead and send that off into the world to then start to collect responses from this survey. Now in another window, I'm going to imagine that I am now a respondent. I have now clicked through to this survey, and I'm now seeing a live page where I can make my submission in response to this survey. So let's say that my name, let's call myself Ice Cream Lover. I'm saying, what do I like most about ice cream? It's cold. My next question, why do you like ice cream so much? It's tasty. My next question, which flavor of ice cream do I like? I like all of them. Here we go to our next question. What time of the day do you eat ice cream? I eat it at nighttime. I'm a good boy. And then lastly, I rate it 10 because I absolutely love ice cream. I'm now going to say that I've completed my 5 questions. I'm going to complete my survey, and I'm going to submit my responses. I then navigate through to this page that says, thank you for completing your survey. That is fantastic. You are welcome. Now back on the side of my users or the survey creator, I can then go ahead and I can start to analyze the results of this survey. If I click through to analyze results, I can start to see the responses to this survey. So I can see responses to each individual question, and I can see who made that response, who submitted the response for the survey. If I were to really love this survey so much, and if I wanting to send it out again or get a new set of responses, I can then clone this survey, which will then move it into the status of build and a draft, create a very new one that I can then go ahead and make changes and then republish it out to my respondents base, to my users base. On the dashboard page, we do then see that our ice cream survey clone has been added to our dashboard. We can then go ahead and make some changes to that if we like, but we have created here a really exciting survey application, which I am very excited to build with you on this journey. If you've ever embarked on the journey of building your own app or startup, you likely understand just how complex the process can become. If you're anything like me and coding isn't your skill set, your choices can feel pretty limited. You could either try to find a technical co-founder or hire a developer to bring your app to life. Now, when it comes to hiring someone to build an app using traditional coding methods, you'd better be prepared to choose between putting down a deposit on your first home or developing a basic MVP.
Is very expensive.
But don't worry if none of these options sounds appealing. That's exactly why we're here to help. If coding isn't your thing, Bubble is going to be your new best friend on your startup journey. Bubble is known as a no-code tool, which essentially means you can build fully functional apps without needing to write a single line of code. With Bubble, our team has been able to create any type of app you can think of, whether it's a marketplace, ride-sharing service, meal delivery platform, matchmaking app, you name it. While there are other no-code tools that can assist with parts of the app development process, Bubble stands out as a full-stack solution. It allows you to design your app's interface, connect everything with visual workflows, store your data in a built-in database, and even integrate with third-party services and tools. Now, each of these components could be a separate no-code product on its own, so it still blows my mind that Bubble includes all of this in one tool.
All in one location.
All right, I think I've talked long enough. Let's jump into the Bubble editor and get started. Throughout this module, we're just going to take the time to set up and configure our own custom database, which is going to be used to power the rest of our Survey Builder app. The very first thing that we are going to do on our SurveyMonkey clone app build journey is to create and configure our own custom database. Now, if you're new to Bubble or new to creating apps in general, the concept of a custom database may be a little bit daunting. However, lucky for us, Bubble makes this super simple. I'm hoping to also make this process very simple for you to follow along by referring to this checklist that I've created in a tool called Notion. Now, Notion is an awesome app or an awesome tool that I really recommend looking into. And I'm going to be using these checkboxes and ticking off each item as we go along, not only in this module, but for the rest of this entire course. Now, the cool part is that a link to this exact Notion checklist will be available in the description of this video so that you can clone this list and follow along as we go throughout our build. Now, when I think of an application, I essentially like to think of it as a database interacting with a user interface through a range of workflows. The foundation of that application is, in fact, the database. So it makes sense that that is the first thing that we are going to cover and the first thing that we're going to build for our SurveyMonkey clone app. Now, there are a few key concepts to walk through when we are configuring our database. So I'm going to take the time to walk through them slowly and build out each data type and data field as we go along. Now, what I've just said, data types and data fields, if you're new to Bubble, that might all sound pretty strange. But let me take the time to explain. A data type is a thing or something that our users or our application is going to create. A data field is the specific information that is related to that data type. For example, in this checklist, we have our data types in bold in these headings, and then we have our data fields placed underneath them with these checkboxes. So for our user data type, for example, a new user will be created whenever someone signs up to our application. When they do sign up, we will also store all their relative information underneath that data type as data fields, such as their name, their email, their profile picture, and the company that they work for. Now, we are going to take the time in this module to build out each data type and add the relative data fields underneath each of those. It is actually a very simple process, and I'm going to take the time to explain the reason why we are adding each data type and data field into our database throughout this module. Now, there is a bit to get through, so let's get started and let's head to our Bubble editor. Now, again, if you're new to Bubble, this might be a completely different screen to what you're used to seeing. When we create a new application, this is what we are greeted with. It is a blank canvas to start creating our application. Now, at the moment, I am on the Design tab, which is seen through this pencil and ruler icon here. We aren't going to spend any time in this tab in this module, nor are we going to spend any time in our Workflow tab. Rather, we are going to spend this module in our Data tab, which is the third icon on the left of our page here. Now, when we click that tab, we do see that we are greeted with this screen. First and foremost, we can see that we are in the data type section. We can choose another section here, but we are in the data type section. And on the left-hand side of our screen, we do see our data types. As we start to add each of these, this list will grow. Same goes for the fields for each data type on the right of our page here. For example, we can see here that right now we have selected the user data type. We can see that on the right, these are the fields to do with the type user. We can see at the moment, there is currently an email, modified date, created date, and a slug field for this user. Now, as we've just created our application, these fields are actually pre-built by Bubble, which you can see via this built-in field light gray text here. But there is also this little identifier here, which is, it might sound confusing, but it is the type of field. So we have the data type, we have the data field, and then we have the type of field for the data. It might sound a little bit confusing, but why I wanted to highlight this was because as we go through and start to add each of our data fields to our data types, they are going to be of a specific type. So say, for example, our user's name will be of type text. The reason it is type text is because it is going to be a string of characters that makes up someone's name. The email is going to be a specific email address, which we can then use as the login, and we can also send emails to that address. And the profile picture is going to be an image file. We don't want to upload text for the profile photo. We only want to upload an image. So that is going to be of the type image. That will be the data, the type of data. It might all sound confusing, but it'll make sense once we start to build it out. But before we get into it, I do want to address one final type of data or thing that you may have noticed, and that is this word here, relational. So we do have a number of different data types here. We have user, company, build, question, and the list goes on. We can make our database what is called relational. Now, what is a relational database? Under our user, for example, we want to store information specific to that user, their name, email, profile photo, as I've mentioned. However, for our company, we don't want to just store one bit of information related to that company. We want to store a range of information specific to that company. So we can say that the type of field that we want to create for our company field here is of type company. Now that might sound a little bit confusing, but what it'll then do, it will then link this record here to a new company data type, which is its own thing, which will then have its own name and logo associated with it. Now, relational databases are actually really simple. They're a really nice way to keep everything clean, keep everything linked, and create a really nice experience for our users. We are going to use relational databases a fair bit in this module, but I briefly wanted to explain what it was before we get started in adding them into our database. So, enough talking, let me get started in adding my data types. As we can see on our Notion checklist, we have our data types in these headings here. And we can see that in our Bubble application, in our database, user has already been created. Like I said, the reason that is because we need users to be logged in to use our applications a lot of the time. So user will be built in, that is fine. Let's go ahead and let's create the company data type. So to add a new data type, all we have to do, it's very simple. Where this new type section is here in this gray box, we can simply give our data type a name. Here we will name it company, and we will choose to create this. Now, when we create this, it adds it to the data types list on the left, number one, but then also we move to the company data fields here. We can start adding those individually just by clicking this create a new field button. We're not going to do that just yet. We are going to continue creating our data types. But first, let me explain why we have created a company data type. Like I said, we may want to add additional users to our company, or we may want to display company-specific information in our application. So we need to ensure that we are creating an ability to add specific fields underneath that company type. Things like their name and their logo and any others that you might want to add once you've built out your application. I'll leave that up to you. So now that we have created the company data type, let's see what is next. Next is our builds. So I'm going to add a new type called build. And what a build is a thing that we are creating, of course. Whenever our users are going to be creating a new survey, we first want to create a version of the survey that they can edit and change and design. It is not going to be live to the world just yet. We are only going to want to create a build version, which is an editable version, which they can tweak and test and then publish once they're happy with it to become a survey. So we are creating a build first and foremost. Next, within that build, we will be having questions. So a question, of course, with our survey application, we are asking our respondents to answer questions. Now, within those questions, we are going to have a bunch of information, like the text and the type of question it is. We are going to add that as individual fields, but for now, we are saying that we are adding a question to our data types list. Next, of course, we have questions. We will have to also have answers. Now, I will add our answer type here. However, it may not be exactly what you're thinking. We are not saying that our respondents are going to then make new things, make the answers here. Rather, instead, we are going to create answer options. I am giving away a bit of the treasure chest, but when we build our survey application, we are going to be adding a multiple choice option or a drop-down option. We will have to set those options as potential answers for our user to create and user to give. So we do have to create that as its own data type. We will get to that shortly, but for now we have created that data type, which is great. Next, once we are happy with our build and our questions and our answer options, we will then publish our survey. Now let's create our new type. Our new type will be survey. I will say that a survey will be very similar to a build. However, it's going to be a bit more static and it's going to be a bit more powerful. We are going to open up our survey page and our survey data types to the world whenever they create a new survey response. But our survey data type will be storing information specific to a published survey. Now, lastly, once our survey is live, we will want to collect responses. Responses are things that our respondents are going to be putting in our input fields and answering the questions that we add for our survey. We are storing these as a list. We are storing, a bunch of answers or responses to a particular survey because there's going to be multiple questions. So this one, again, will also be very powerful, but this is how we are going to collect and store and then display all of the responses that we are getting to our survey from our respondents. So now that we have created all of those data types and I've briefly explained the role that they are all going to play in our application, let's go ahead and let's start to add our data fields. So let's start with our user. So like I said, whenever a new person signs up to our application, they will sign up and create a new user. Now, like I said, their email address is already pre-built by default by Bubble, so we don't need to make a change there. However, we will want to store their name. When a user registers for our application, we do want to store their name. So I'm going to create a new field called name. Might sound a bit confusing, but our field name here is going to be name. Now you might have noticed to bring up this dialog box, I simply clicked this button here, create a new field, and it has brought up this box here where I can give my field a name, choose the field type, and then pretty much check a box to say if this is going to be a list. We'll get to this. But like I said, we can give our field a name and then choose the type of data that we are going to want to choose for this field. Now we can choose an existing data type, which is that relational aspect, which I will get to. However, we can choose to give it just a basic type. Now we're not going to want to have our name to be a number or a date or a file or an image. We will simply want it to be a text value because it's going to be a string of characters to make up someone's name. I'm simply going to hit this blue create button and that is going to add the name to my user data type. So we've added our first data field. I can then go and tick off that I have completed this first item. We have also created the email by default, so I'm going to click that off too. That's great. And then next we are going to allow the user to upload their own profile picture and store that to their user record. This will be an image file, so let's head across and let's do this. I'm going to create a new field. We are going to call this name profile photo. However, what I'm going to do, just a personal preference, I don't like to have spaces in my field, so I just add this dash. I don't know if there's any reason for it, just a bit of a personal preference. You don't have to do it, but that's what I like to do. Now for our field type, it is going to be of type image. It is going to be an image file, and there is only going to be one profile photo per user, so it's not going to be a list. We are going to hit create. Now, after creating our profile photo data field, you may have noticed that we do have a bit of a change over here. In this right-hand side of our data field section, we can set some defaults for our value. For example, if we wanted to give our user a default name, let's say, for example, if when they register, they don't put in their name, we can give them a default name just by putting a value in this box here, default name. Now, we're not going to do this because every time we have a new user register, they are going to put in their name. However, for our profile photo, we will want to have just a default. We are going to allow our users to update their profile photo on the settings page. However, that's optional. They don't have to do that. Let's set a default profile photo, just as you might have seen a similar avatar style or a placeholder image on another application that you might have used for when you haven't uploaded your profile photo. One of these might look a bit familiar. I'm going to scroll over to this window here because I do want to show you that I have created a Google Drive link with a bunch of these default and standard images that we will be using throughout this course for you to access and download as we go. So I'm going to upload this user photo avatar blank placeholder style image into my default section so that whenever a new user is created, they do have a default profile photo. So let me upload that now. Now I'm uploading that image and Bubble has just uploaded as the default. We can take a look at it here. and confirm that yes, that is the image that we will be seeing. That is the default profile photo that we will be adding for our user record. Now next, let's create I'm going to check this off. Let's create our new data field, which will be company, a relational company field. So how do we do that? Let's create a new field. We are going to call this field company. However, our field type is not going to be text or an image or a number or anything like. It is actually going to be of type company. Now we are only going to have one company per user, so we don't need to check that to be a list. Now when I hit create, you will see that it says here that the type is company. And this is where our relational database starts to come into play. We are now relating this field to any field that is in this company data type. So a really cool way to link our database together and make it relational. Really cool feature. Bubble makes this super simple, which is fantastic. Let me now go ahead and I will add my fields to my company data type. Similar to what we have done for our users, we are going to give our company a name. We can just call this name, that is fine. Our field type again will be text, and there's only going to be one company name per record. So we're going to create this. We aren't going to set a default because again, we are going to allow our user to customize this when they register for our application. But we are going to do something similar for our company logo. We are going to allow Bubble to store a logo for our company in our database. This will, similar to the profile photo, be an image. And when I hit create, I do also want to set another default for this logo. The default that I'm going to create will be this business logo icon that you see here. Sounds pretty familiar. Let me upload that as the default. Now I have uploaded that image, as we can see here. It is uploaded. Whenever our new company record is created, that will be the default logo image. Now, throughout our database, we will have to, let's say we have to link our data types back to each other. So in this user field here, we have it linked to the company. We will have to link it back for most cases. However, for our user, we actually don't have to do that because it is done by default. We can see here that our creator is the user built-in field here. So this is the way to say that within every company, the user that creates this company will be stored in the database there. So in some instances, we will have to do a bi-directional relationship between our databases, between our data types rather. However, we don't have to do that for our user data type. So now that that is done, let's take a look at our Notion checklist, and we have completed the name and we have added the image for our company data type. Next, let's look at the build. So we're going to head to our build data type, and let's again create a new field name, which will be called name. Similar, I know, but this is what is going to be the name of our survey, or the name of our build while it's in this state. We are going to call our surveys, in the demo example, I called it ice cream survey, or we are going to call it something else like an employee satisfaction survey or anything the like. We are going to store that information or that entry as a field in our build. So that is going to be a text value. There's only going to be one name for each build at a time. So we're going to create, and we've just created our name for our build. Now again, we are going to add an image for our build. Let's call this image. This is a bit of custom branding that we're going to allow our users to add to each build to then place on their survey. And again, I am going to create a default image. The default image that I am going to create this time is just this SurveyMonkey logo. Now here you can have your own logo be the default here or anything else, or you can just leave it blank and allow the user to create that whenever they create their build. However, I'm going to choose it to be that SurveyMonkey logo. So there we have just uploaded that image, and that will be uploaded to every single build whenever we create it. Now next, I will want to add a company relationship to each build. So for each build, we do have, of course, the creator, but we also want to link each build to a company. The reason we want to do that is because if we have, like I said, multiple users within the one company, all the, let's say the team members can see the builds that have been created by someone within that company. So this is if we are spreading our application out to a wider team. This will allow on our dashboard, for example, for any user from that team to log on and see any build that has been created by that company. That's getting a little bit down the line, but we just want to make sure that we have that in our database so that we have that base covered. So that of course will be a type company because we do want to link it back to our company. However, what I want to do now is I want to add an option set. This is a little bit different, something that we haven't done yet and something that might take a little bit of explanation. So far for each of our fields, we are allowing our users to upload or make a change or create something that is completely their own, that is their own, text or their own image, their own name or their own logo or anything of the like. However, for our status field for our build, we only want one of two options. We only want our status to ever be in the status of draft or published. Now, why is an option set the choice here? Let me scroll down here and I will show you what an option set is. So an option set here is where we are stipulating only a specific set of options, as the name suggests, for a particular field. We don't want our users to write their own version of it because that will cause a lot of problems. We only want to give them one of two options. So the way we are going to add an option set is we are going to click this option sets tab here, and we are going to skip our tutorial. I'll be the one to give you a tutorial. I'll explain how it works. This new option set, let's call this status. This is the field that we are creating. So we will be creating a status option set field here. So we don't want to set the option set to be of type build. It just wants to be the field there, which is status. And for our options, we do want to display text when we display these options to our users. The two options we are going to give, we're going to stipulate in this box here. So it is going to be in the status of either draft or the status of published. And we're going to create that. Now here we can see that we do have our two options. When we go back to our data types section here, I'm going to create a new field and we are going to call this field status. Now you will see that when I click this field type drop down, I am given a new option to select the status option set as my field type. Again, there's only going to be one status per build. So we're going to hit create, and there we can see if I click this drop down, this is the experience that our users will run into. They will be given either of these options. It's not a plain text where they can put in and make mistakes. It is only these two options. Now we are actually going to take care of this in the back end. We are actually going to only create a new build in the status of draft, and then when it gets published to be a survey, it will be in the status of published. So we're actually not going to give that capability to our users. However, a option set is a fantastic solution if you're in this situation. We are actually going to use this in a few data types time. So you will see this again very shortly. Let's head back to our Notion checklist and say that yes, we have created our option set of status to be published or draft. And we have also set our option set status to be an option set there. Now, our next data field that we are going to be creating is our question. It is going to be relational. It is going to be of the name question. The field type here will be questions because we are storing specific information underneath this question data field, data type. But each build is going to have a list of questions associated with it. Each build and each survey might have 5 questions, it might have 10 questions, it might have 100 questions. So here we do want to set this field to be a list. When this happens, we are essentially storing a list of questions underneath this one build, and then within each of those questions, there will be its own data fields. So we will add that when we move to our question data type, which we will do now once I check off this box here. Let's move to our next data type, which is the type question. Firstly, we are giving our field a name. Let's call this text. This is going to be question text, which will essentially be the text of the question. I don't know if I can explain that any better, but this will be the question itself. This will be the text value of something like, do you like ice cream? Or what time of the day do you eat ice cream, like we just saw? There is only going to be one question text per question, so that we are going to create that there, and there we have our question text. Next, we are going to create another option set. Now here, we have actually arrived at a really exciting data field, as strange as that might sound. We are creating an option set here, which is of the option set name of type. And here, we are allowing our users to choose the type of response or the type of question that we want to display in our survey. So as you've seen on the demo, we do have the types of short answer, long answer, multiple choice, drop down, or 1 to 10 rating. So here we can give those options. You may have more to add further down the line, but for now in this course, we are only going to focus on building those 5 options. Now we are going to have these as new fields. We're going to give our users an option from a drop down to make this choice. So here we are stipulating what our option sets are going to be. We have multiple choice. We have also drop down. And lastly, we have 1 to 10 rating. Now, if we head back to our data types, you can see when we click, when we firstly create the new field, let's call this field type. The field type for this field, sorry guys, very confusing, will be of type, and there's only going to be 1 type per question. We can see that we have these options to choose from. So that is how we're going to create a new questions and have the different experience specific to the question type. So for a short answer, it will be a single line input. For a long answer, multi-line, drop down, and the like. Now, a spoiler alert, this functionality is going to take up a lot of our course. This is going to be a really exciting feature and function of our application. That is going to be really cool when we get to it. So we've just completed the option set of type. Let's go ahead and add our build and our survey first. Let's go our build, which will be of the type build. There's only going to be 1 build per set of questions, so it'll be of type build. Our survey will also be the same story. We have created our survey data types, so we can say it's a survey, only going to be 1. However, for our answers and our responses, these will be lists. So within each question, we are going to have multiple options for answers. So these are going to be our types answer, which will be multiple. Here, for example, is where we are stipulating what we want our drop-down answers to be, our drop-down choices to be for our answers. So there's going to be multiple of them. And we are also going to do the same for our responses. Each question is going to have a number of responses to it. Each question is going to have a number of people answering it, which we will then want to store as a list of responses. So we have added our build and our survey to our question. We've added our answers and our responses as lists to the question as well. Now, I did just briefly mention the role that an answer has to play in our application. So let's go ahead and add that field. What we are showing here is the answer option. So we are giving options for our answers for our users to pick from. So here we are simply saying this is text. There's only going to be one text value per answer because there's going to be multiple answers underneath the one question. We are going to say that it is going to be options as the answers in a text field. We will then want to relate this back both to our build and our question as well. So let's add those as relational data types here, question, and will be a question as well. We don't want to, or we don't really need to link it back to the survey because we are linking it back to the question. However, we do want to make sure that it is associated with the build just so that we can display it in the right way. It'll make sense when we get to it, but we do want to make those 2 fields relational, and we want to have a text field for our answer option. Now, next we have our surveys. Now, surveys are very similar to our builds. And the reason that is because a build will convert into a survey when it is published. However, the additional part of our survey will be that we will also be storing responses underneath that survey associated with it. So we will also be displaying a list of responses. So we will get to that and add it as a relational list. But first, let's add the name and image to our survey field. So our survey, similar to our build, does have a name, which will be of type text, and there will only be 1 name per survey. Same goes for the image, which will be, of course, an image field, image, and there will only be 1 of those there as well. Now, underneath our surveys, we will have a list of questions and a list of responses. So let's have, first, let's just say response. If you're worried about plurals, we don't have to say plural here, although it is a list of responses. we can only say it as a single response. That's fine. Let's not spend too much time worrying about that because there we can see it as a list of responses. Let's do the same for our questions. We can just say the word question. The field type will be question, but it will be a list. So we will have a list of questions. Now, lastly, similar to our build, we do want to display the survey specific to a company. So we will also be creating a company relational field for our survey too. Let's take a look back at our Notion checklist to make sure that we've done everything. Name, image, yes. The company, yes. And the list of questions and the list of responses. Now, lastly, we do have this final data type called response. I will actually just, while I'm here, check off that yes, we have completed our type option set as well. Sorry about that. For our response data type, we do have a couple of different fields to store here. So for our response, we are going to have a respondent who is going to be a person that is accessing our survey and answering the questions. So we want to store that respondent's name. So let's say here, respondent, and that field type will be of type text because that is going to be the respondent's name. Now, if you wanted to create your own experience, you could call this respondent name, store this as text, and then also store additional information if you capture it on the survey submission, such as the respondent's email address or phone number or other information. But for now, I only want to display their name, so I only want to display the respondent's name as text. Now, so we have our respondents. They are going to give responses, or they are going to give answers to our questions. I know we do have an answer data type here. However, our answers linked to our responses will be stored as text. So we can call this field answer, and we can, instead of displaying it as data type answer, we are simply going to display this as text, and it will be a list. Because the reason we have an answer data type is because we are giving some answer options as text, but here we are giving actual answers, so we can display this as a list of texts within our responses. We will then display these answers on the results page on our actual page where we get to analyze our responses and take a look at the feedback that we've received from our surveys, but this will be displayed as a list of texts. Now, lastly, just to close the loop here, we do also want to link our responses back to our survey. There is only going to be one survey per response. So they are responding to a particular survey. So there's only going to be one of those. However, our responses are going to be linked to a list of questions. So here we can say that we have our question list for each response. We're going to have a list of text as answers, and they are going to be mapped to a list of questions, which will be a link to the response. Actually, my apologies. I've just completely said the wrong thing. Let's call this question here because we have a list of questions. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if I read that out wrong but we do have a list of questions there. So sorry about that. Now, back in Notion, we can see that we have ticked off these final data fields. So the database that we aim to build at the start of this module has been built, which is awesome news. However, I just want to talk about one database specific nuance that we have to just quickly address. And that is here on the right, on the left-hand side here, these privacy rules, and this one says privacy rules applied. The reason I want to talk about this is because, like I said, we have created this company data field where I am allowing you, when you completely build your app, to add additional users to a company. Now, what we will be allowing each user to do is see information that has been created by another person within that company. We are allowing our users to see data that has been created by other users. So what I have to do is I do have to go to my privacy tab here and head down to my user and remove this privacy rule. Now, this is created by default by Bubble, and this essentially says that we are only allowing the current user to see their own data. We're only allowing them to see the data that they have created. However, like I said, if we have multiple users underneath a single company, we want them to see each other's data. So we can remove this. We will take care of this privacy on the user interface end. We are only going to display information specific to the company of the current user. So we will take care of the privacy of our application. We're going to make sure that that is all fine. So now that we've created our own custom database, you might be thinking, yeah, this is cool. We've added all of these fields, but what does this actually look like? Well, if I head to this app data tab here, we can sort of see what we've just created. It is currently all blank, but what we have just created is the foundation or the tables for our database. We have all of our data types on the left here. We can sort of start to see what this will look like when users start to interact with our application. For example, for our users, we can see the emails and the companies and the names and the profile photos and all the other information of each user that is added to our database as entries are added as they sign up. Same goes for our builds. As users start to create builds, we can see this table start to be filled out. When they add questions to their build, this table will be filled out. At the moment, it is all currently blank, but as we continue to push and test our application, these fields will start to be filled out. I will mention, quick note, when we do the build of our app, we will be using a development version. So if we, let's say for example, preview our application, we will just be seeing a development or a test version that isn't live to the world yet. So we'll be, when we start to preview this and test this, we'll be working with our development database. However, when we push our applications live, so you do have to upgrade to the next, to a paid bubble plan to push it live, you will be working with a live database. So you can have a test database and a live database separate. I did just want to quickly mention that to say that you can add as much data as you want. Actually, no, I think you can only add a specific amount, a capped amount while you have a free version, but you can test out what this will start to look like in your database as you start adding entries to it by testing it out. So with that all being said, we have successfully completed our first task, this first module for our SurveyMonkey clone. We've built the custom database and we have configured it to store all of our specific data fields of the specific types of data for those, so that we have built a fantastic foundation for our application. Now let's start adding some features in the next few modules. I'll see you then. Now that we've covered the database part of our Survey Builder app, let's explore the design section of our bubble editor by creating our first page. Throughout this module, I'm going to show you how to build a marketing page to showcase the branding and brilliance of your application. This will be a public landing page that will aim to convince people to sign up for your application. Here on our Notion checklist for our SurveyMonkey clone, I'm going to scroll down to this section here, which is our features section. Now here we can see all of the features that we are going to build as part of our SurveyMonkey clone app. Now, as I'm scrolling, you might be thinking, oh wow, there is a lot of things that we are going to do. And you're not wrong, but luckily, I'm going to walk through these nice and slow with you and talk through how to build each of these features and why we are building them and what part they play in the grander scheme of our SurveyMonkey clone app. Now, of course, we want this app to be very functional and super seamless for our users. So it makes sense that there is a lot to cover. However, we are going to start nice and simple. The very first feature that we are going to build for our SurveyMonkey clone is a marketing homepage. Now, why will we want to do this? The great thing about Bubble is it allows you to build apps that you can then essentially sell to users. You can essentially create something and then potentially earn some money for it or provide a business solution for it. We're going to be building a marketing page so that when someone comes to our app for the first time, they can be given a nice aesthetic welcome to our app and hopefully be convinced to sign up and start using. If, for example, we were to take a look at the current SurveyMonkey website, we would see a page that looks something like this, where essentially we have a bit of a navigation or a lead generation, or essentially just like a bit of a homepage where SurveyMonkey is communicating the benefits of this product to hopefully to try and get people to sign up and start using. As you can see here, there is a lot of bits of content. There's a lot of images and icons and headings and text. However, in this module, we're going to keep it nice and simple, and we are going to simply just rebuild this top section here, which we're going to call our hero section. We're going to be building this header, this bit of text on the left with these buttons and this image on the right, so that when someone comes to our homepage for the very first time, they're greeted with a nice bit of aesthetic. However, we're also going to allow you, the builder, the opportunity to build out the rest of the page however you see fit. As you can see, there's a lot of SurveyMonkey specific text and images and the like here. We're just going to help get you started so that you can build your own app and your own marketing homepage as you go along. Now, in this module, I'm also going to give you a bit of a crash course in how to build using the Bubble editor. Now, there is a lot we are going to cover. However, this is a nice little introduction to how to work with things like responsive design and groups and the different elements and the property editor. So this is going to be a great module. So let's get started. Let's scroll across, not to our Notion checklist, but to our Bubble editor. And we are going to be working in this design tab today. Now, before I get into it, let's just have a quick look at what we are seeing here. Essentially, on the left, we have a menu of visual elements, which are all the things that we are going to be adding to our page in a few moments. We have this white section here, which is the blank canvas that we'll be adding elements to and essentially building our page in our UI. And on the top left, we can see we have a few options for things that we want to do from a functional level. But the first thing that I want to draw your attention to is this drop down where we can see the pages of our application. Now here we can add new pages or navigate to existing pages that we've built. However, for our home page, I just want to call attention that we are working on the index page. Now by default, Bubble creates an index page for every single app, and essentially an index page is the home page or the first page that someone visiting the app is going to see. If you can think of this from a URL perspective, this page is simply, for example, SurveyMonkey.com. It's not SurveyMonkey.com/index, which will be the case for all of our other pages that we build. This is just our home page. So it makes sense to have our marketing page in this area of our application, because this is the first thing that a new user is going to see, which will hopefully prompt them to register an account, or an existing user is going to see to allow them to log in. As we continue to build out the rest of our app, we are going to be adding new pages. However, we're going to just start on this index page and get started with our marketing homepage. Now, as you might have just noticed, when I clicked on this white section, it brings up this gray box here, which is called our property editor. Any edit we are going to make to our page will be done in the property editor. It is a very powerful tool, and I'll walk through each of the different tabs and areas of it as we go along in this module. But there is one more thing that I want to touch on before we actually get started. Now, with our application, we are going to focus on something called responsive design. Now, if you're new to Bubble, or if you're new to building applications or websites or anything the like, you might be thinking, what the heck is responsive design? In a nutshell, responsive design means that a user is going to have a great experience on our application, regardless of the device or the browser they are viewing our app on. For example, if a user is viewing an application on a desktop or a laptop, they're going to be seeing everything in a nice wide landscape view. However, if they're viewing our application on mobile, that's going to change. That's going to be a portrait view that's going to be a lot skinnier and taller. So we have to design our application and our elements in a way that, regardless of the device they are viewing our application on, it's all seamless, the navigation's the same, everything looks nice and doesn't break essentially. Let me show you an example. So let me add two buttons to this page. If I add a button here and if I add another button here, at the moment, they are just placed in the area that I drop them, which might seem like a pretty cool feature. However, this is not responsive. At the moment, this button's on the left and this button's on the right are a pretty square box. It's nice and wide. Where if you can imagine, if I were to view this on a mobile device, it would be a lot thinner and these buttons would not be in a good spot. These would not look nice. Now, let me show you what I mean by that. So on the left of our page here, we see that we are in the UI Builder tab of our set of elements. However, if I click on this responsive tab here, it brings me up to something that looks a little bit different. Now here, I can change the layout or the width of this page. So let me change this to be, let's say, for example, let's only go, say, 500 pixels. Let's see what happens. It doesn't look great. One of those buttons has essentially disappeared. If I change this to 800, it comes back. Oh, it's over here. But essentially, it breaks our app. It doesn't make it look nice. Things are hidden away. We essentially don't want to do this. We don't want our container layout to be fixed. Now, what does that mean? A fixed container layout. Let me change the page width here back to be 1080, which is what it was when we landed on this. If I head back to my UI Builder tab here and click on this and bring up the property editor, you can see that we are now in this layout tab. We were on the appearance tab, but we're now on this layout tab. At the moment, our container layout is fixed. And this essentially means that every single element that we're going to add is going to be fixed in place where we drop it in its current coordinates. However, we do not want this. This is not responsive. To make our page responsive, now I'm going to change my container layout not to be fixed. If I click this drop down, it gives me a few other options. I am only ever going to choose a row or a column container layout. Now, 2 questions. What is this and why is this? Let me choose first and foremost a column container layout. Let's see what happens. Now, whenever I choose the column container layout, what happens is my page then stacks my elements from top to bottom, sort of like a spreadsheet. You know how there's the columns that are everything top to bottom. It's the vertical alignment of elements or bits of information within a page or within a spreadsheet or anything of the like. We want to choose this because if you think of a lot of applications or websites that you visit nowadays, all the elements of that page are stacked from top to bottom. Let me show you this in practice. I'm going to head back to my SurveyMonkey page and explain that this is essentially a column container layout. We have our header at the top of our page here, which is in white, and then below it we have this hero section, and then below that we have these next set of blocks or these bits of content stacked from top to bottom. Now we want our page to also be a column container layout because we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be adding a header followed by our hero section. Now what is the beauty of this? If I head back to my responsive tab, we can see here that we can now drag the page width of our page, and this is responsive. It's literally responding to the page width or to the device that our viewer is viewing or our visitor is visiting our application on. For example, here they're on a tablet, which is 992 pixels wide. On a mobile, it's 320 pixels. It looks like that. It looks a lot nicer. We're not hiding the buttons or making sure that it's going to be skewed. We're making it all look nice and seamless within our experience. While I'm here, I might just quickly show you what a row container layout is. A row container layout is when our elements are stacked side by side. So in a row, similar to my spreadsheet example, along a horizontal axis. Same story that if I were to drag the page width along here, it still all looks the same. An interesting one though, if I were to go less than the width of my buttons, it is responsive. Again, it does change it and align it in a different way. This is top to bottom, but we'll touch on this shortly. But essentially, we'll only want to have a row or a column container layout because it is responsive. Let me change this back to a column, and as I continue to build out our page, you'll see this in practice. Now, there is one final thing I want to add before I start to build out my marketing homepage. And if you'll notice, with the buttons that I've just added to this page as an example, they've been blue. What if I want these to be by default a different color? We can do that in our Styles tab. Now you can find the Styles tab on the left-hand side of the bubble editor under this little paintbrush icon, which is pretty clever. And if I click on that, I'm actually going to just bypass this element styles section because we can make changes to individual elements here. I'm going to make changes to our style variables, which are essentially the default style settings for our application. There are 2 main sections here, which are the fonts, which are the default fonts that are going to be used throughout our app, or our default colors. If I make a change to this, it is going to be the default, or it is going to be the standard for any element on our application if we choose it to be. For example, if I change the font of my application to be from Open Sans to be Arial, which is a personal favorite of mine, that means that anytime I add a text element or any other text-based element to my application, it's going to be in the Arial font. This is just a nice little marketing thing that makes everything nice and consistent and allows you to add your branding and your style to your application. Now, what about colors? If we scroll across to the SurveyMonkey homepage here, we see this nice green color, which looks to be a bit of a brand specific color. It's a nice green that we see. Let's add this color to our application so that it is a true SurveyMonkey clone. If I scroll back across to my bubble editor, I'm given the chance to change my default color, which is the primary color for buttons, actions, and clickable elements and the like. I'm going to change my color code here to be 00BF6F. Now that is the color code for the nice SurveyMonkey green that we saw earlier. If I click enter, you can see that that is changed. If I go back to my design tab, you can see that my buttons have changed, and anytime I add another button, it is going to be this nice green color. You can choose any color that you like, depending on your brand or your application. But the cool thing is that anytime we add an element now, we won't have to go ahead and change the color to match our branding. You can copy that color code if you like, or choose your own. We are now in a good position to build out our marketing homepage. Let me get rid of my buttons here. I'm going to get started. Now, the first section that we are going to add to this marketing homepage is our header. Taking a look at the SurveyMonkey homepage, you can see here that we have the SurveyMonkey logo, followed by some drop downs, a bunch of different ones, some individual text elements, which will take us to, say, the pricing page or the enterprise page. We then have this globe icon, which I assume is to change the language, some text elements to do an action like contact sales or log in, or a button to sign up. We are just going to add a logo and these two buttons here to log in or sign up. Because we don't essentially have a product page or a template page or anything of the like. We're just going to add these sections here in the white space to our application. So let's get started on doing that first. Scrolling across to our bubble editor, the first thing that we are going to do, the first thing that we are going to add to this homepage is a group. Now you might be thinking, Shane, I thought you said we were adding a logo first. Well, within our header element, we are actually stacking elements side by side. It might be a little bit confusing, but what I'm saying here is that our index page, the container layout, is a column. However, we want to stack some elements side by side in some areas of this page. And that, for example, is our header. So let me go ahead and add my group to this page. I'm going to first and foremost just change some of the styling of this group so that we can see what we're working with. And let me explain how to do that. So at the moment, when we've added our group to this page, you can see it's this small box that's only 40 pixels by 40 pixels. Firstly, I'm going to show you how to change the width of a group as a starting point. So we're currently on our layout tab. We're not on our appearance tab. We're on our layout tab. Let me just, so that I can see what I'm working with, let me change this to be 400 pixels wide by 400 pixels high, just as an example. I'm also going to head to my appearance tab and just change the color just for now, so that again, we can see what we're working with. So that if, for example, if I change it to be sort of like this, this gray color, if I click away, I can still see the element on my page. I can still see the group and I can still see what I'm working with. Just a bit of a personal preference, but I like to just color my groups while I'm working on them. Now with this group, if I were to add another element, we can see here that yes, our index page is a column container. It's added the group first and the button second. However, if we change this group layout to be a row, when I add elements inside of the group, it will stack them side by side. So although the greater index page itself is a column container layout, we can essentially create what I like to think of as pages within pages and set them as different container layouts, which in this case is going to be a row container layout. Might all seem a little bit confusing, but it'll make sense as I continue to build this out. Let me get rid of my buttons again. I might also, while I'm here, I might also give my group a name. Now to change the name of a group or an element such as a button, we can do that by simply hovering over the title or the top section of our property editor and just change it. This is currently group A. I'm going to change this to be group header. The reason I'm going to do that is because then on the left in my elements tree here, I can easily identify what this element is. This is also great for if we make changes in our workflows down the line. It's just a nice way to identify our elements within those sections of our bubble editor. Now what I'm going to do next is just explain that yes, I have made this element 400 pixels by 400 pixels just to start with, but I did just probably breeze over this width and height section a little bit too quick. So let me just talk about these sections and what we want to do most of the time. So as you can see here, if we were to choose to make this element fixed width by selecting this checkbox here, this essentially means that whenever, again, regardless of the device or the width of this index page that the user is visiting our site on, this will never change. So because the element fixed width checkbox is checked, our header menu will always be 400 pixels wide, where we don't want this. We want it to be unchecked. Now, as you can see, the minimum width is set as 400. So again, if a user were visiting on this page on a 320 pixels wide device, such as a mobile phone, it still wouldn't look great. So how do we fix this? we want to set our minimum width to be 0 pixels. We also want our maximum width to continue to be infinite, and we do not want to fit the width to our content. Let me explain what all of those things are. So as I've just unchecked this fixed width to content, what we're essentially doing is we are making this element responsive. Regardless of the device that a user visits our application on, it will be a responsive experience. So when I chose to uncheck it to be fixed width, it means it's going to change. When I chose to uncheck the fit width to content, it means that regardless of what the content within our group is, it is going to abide by these width parameters. And because I chose for the width to be infinite from a maximum perspective, it means it will go as wide as the browser device is. This can be, if you're looking at a desktop that's 10 meters wide, it'll still cover the whole width of that browser because our maximum width is infinite. Same goes for our minimum width of 0. If they were visiting our site on a very skinny device, it wouldn't happen, I don't think, but it will be as small or as large as it needs to be, regardless of the browser size that our user is visiting our application on. Now, we are going to do this a lot of the time, but now that I've explained that, let me just move on to the height. Now, the height might be a little bit different. I will leave this height at a minimum of 400 pixels just for now so that I can add elements in and it's not going to look strange. It's just a nice workspace that I can deal with, but I will come back to this, I do promise. Let's go ahead and add finally our first element. So I'm going to click back to the UI builder here and I'm going to choose to add a visual element. Now under this visual elements tab here, we can see a bunch of, text or buttons or icons or links or images or anything of the like. I'm going to add an image to this group. To do that, I can simply click on this image section here and I can drag it onto my page. Now you'll see this blue line, which is essentially notifying me where this element will be dropped. I don't want it to be in this blue section here, which will essentially add it below my group. I want to put it inside the group. And if the line looks like that, it means I'm going into a row container. If I drop that, it'll sit nicely within my header row. Now, when we add images to our bubble editor, our property editor looks a little bit different. We're given the choice to add either a static image, which is the image that is always going to be the same, it won't change, or a dynamic image, which I will touch on shortly. For now, I'm just going to add a static image. Now, if I click this little cloud and upload button, I can upload whatever image I like. The image that I'm going to upload is actually this SurveyMonkey logo that we can find in our drive. This is just essentially the SurveyMonkey logo that we've seen before, that we've added as the default in our previous module. We are simply just adding this logo to our bubble editor. Now you can choose to add your own logo if you like, but for now, let me go ahead and add that to my header. Okay, so I've just uploaded my image, but as you can see, it doesn't look great. Now, why has it done this? If I head to my layouts tab, we can see that it is chosen for this element to be a fixed width of 320 pixels, which isn't quite the issue. The issue is that it's a height of 240 pixels. It's not the width or height that I've actually uploaded, or my image actually is that I have uploaded here. The actual width and height of the element that I uploaded was actually 220 pixels by 35 pixels. Now, this might be different to the logo that you're going to upload if you choose to upload your own, but this is essentially the file that I had on hand. So when I change that to actually be the width and height of the image, it makes it look nice. It actually puts it in the right proportions. But what if this isn't the size that I want it? Bubble does make this kind of easy actually. I can choose to keep the aspect ratio of this element fixed. If I choose to check this box, you can see that automatically it's calculated that this aspect ratio is 44 wide by 7 high, which is just a 44:7 ratio. If I then go ahead and change the width of this element to, let's say, only be 175 pixels, which is something that makes a little bit more sense, you can see that it doesn't skew, it looks the same and it looks nice. So that's the choice that we are going to choose in this example for our image element. We are going to choose it to keep the aspect ratio fixed so that it looks nice and it doesn't skew and it doesn't look like what we uploaded during the first instance. Now for this image element, you'll see that it's currently sitting in the top left-hand side of our header, which when we change the height of our header, it might not look too bad. But here we're actually going to choose a different, what's called vertical alignment. Now, a vertical alignment is essentially where vertically our element sits in our row container layout. If I choose, for example, to center my element, it does sit it nicely within the middle part of this header group within this row container layout, which looks a little bit nicer. So let's choose this option. But as you can see, again, it does not sit perfectly at the moment. It sits right on the left-hand side of my page. We want it to sit off the side of our page a little bit, just so that it looks a little bit nicer. To do that, I'm going to add some margin. Now, if you think of margin, it's essentially some space around the box of our element. So if you can see on this sort of blue-red line here, that is the border of our image element. If I add some margin, it is going to add some space to the group that this element is sitting in. So let's say, for example, I'm going to add 20 pixels of margin to the left-hand side. We can see that my image element sits off the side of our page by 20 pixels. Now, this is great for responsive design because let's say, for example, I'm going to choose to view the mobile width. We can see that it does sit nicely in the grander scheme of the page, of the device that the user would be visiting our application on. So margin is a fantastic way to just add some visual and aesthetic neatness to our application, which is great. Just so that it's consistent, let me also add 20 pixels of margin to the top and 20 to the bottom. I'm going to also add 20 to the right, just so that our image element always has some nice spacing around it, regardless of the additional elements that we add to our group. So let's now add our next element. The next element that we're going to add is a text element, which is going to say login. This is going to be where we are allowing our user to click this and log in to their existing user account of our SurveyMonkey application if they have one. To do that, let me drag a text element next to this image element. You can see that by this blue line that it'll sit next to my image element. If I click to drop that, you can see that it's been added to the page. It does look a little bit strange because it's not vertically aligned, which we'll touch on shortly. But first, let me explain what we can see when we add a text element to our bubble editor. What do we see in the property editor? Here we can see this text editor here where we can make changes to essentially what is in our text box. Let me show you what this means. If I were to simply change this to say the words login, it'll reflect in my text element, which is great. I can then scroll down and change some of the styling of this text element. I can choose to have some basic styles that are by default. Let's say, for example, if I were to choose heading 2, it would make it bigger. I can preset some styles depending on what I want the default of this element to be. However, let me just choose it to be none so that I can customize it for this example. Now, I have just noticed that it has changed this HTML tag, which I'm just going to change back to normal. We're not going to spend any time explaining essentially what that is today. But what I can change here is the essential style of this text element in this section here. As you can see, the font is the app font, the default that I've set, which is Arial. I can change the thickness or the weight of this text element based if I want it to be bold, if I want it to be thin. I'm just going to set it to be regular, which is fine, which you can see has changed it to be a little bit thinner, just the regular Arial font. I can also choose to change the size of this font. I might just change it back to be 14, which is the standard. I can choose to change the alignment, which because our text element is the width of the text in there, isn't going to make a difference. I can choose to make it to be bold and italic and underlined, but I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just explaining it. And I can add some final font changes here, but this is just showing that we can make some styling changes to our individual elements with ease. What I will do though is I'll head to my layout tab and I'm going to again vertically align this in the center of my group just so that it fits nicely in the grander scheme of my header. Now, before I move on, I'm actually just going to skip a few steps actually. I'm going to go ahead and add my next button, which is going to be my sign up button. This is going to be added for people who don't have an account and want to sign up to use our app or to register. Now, just let me quickly explain that when I add buttons, I can do similar things to my text elements. I can make changes to the label, which is the text that is inside this button. I could also change it to be an icon or an icon and a label, but for now, I'm just going to choose it to be a label. I'm going to say here, sign up. I will change the style and the color of this button shortly. But what I want to talk about is creating groups within pages. It might all seem a little bit crazy, but let me show you how I'm going to do this and why I'm going to do this. Before I do that, let me vertically align this button in the center of my page. Now, what you'll see here is that because we have chosen the row layout for this header element, this header container group, you can see that it's added these elements completely side by side with no margin. And it's also stacked them to the very left-hand side of my page. If I click this group, you can see that because this left-aligned container alignment option is chosen, it's adding them all to the left. I can choose to center them or to add them to the right. There are these two other options, which I'm going to touch on shortly. But because we want to make our application fully responsive, there's a little trick that we're going to do here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select this text element. I'm going to hit the Shift key. I'm going to also select this button, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose to group these elements together. Now, why would I do that? If I were to group them in a row container in their own individual group, a row container would of course sit them side by side. But look at what I can do now. Because I want to add some spacing in between this SurveyMonkey logo and these two elements here, I can make the page responsive and I can sit them far apart. If at the moment I can't do that quite because I can sit them in the middle or I can sit them to the side. However, there is this option here which is called space around and this option here which is called space between. Let's see what happens if I click this space between button. It has added some space between the elements, as the name explains. It has grouped these two elements side by side because I want them to be together. I want them to be on the right hand side of my page rather, and it has put the SurveyMonkey logo on the left hand side of my header, which is great. But the true reason this is awesome is because if I now hit my responsive tab, the space between these two groups changes. And it again makes it fully responsive, which is really cool. Grouping elements within greater groups is completely fine and completely standard and allows you to make your elements look really cool, and it aligns them really well together, which is fantastic. I can then go ahead and make some styling changes to this group. Say for example, I can add some margin around this group. So as you can see, there's our border of our group here. If I wanted to add, similar to what I've done for my SurveyMonkey image logo here, I can add 20 pixels of margin to the right, 20 to the left, 20 to the top and 20 to bottom. That just allows some nice spacing around our group so that it's not sitting directly on the edges of our device or of our browser. And then if I choose to change or add some margin to this login text element here, I can do that as well. I can add let's simply add 10 pixels of margin to the right. This will sit them side by side with some nice spacing. As we can see, our header menu is starting to look really cool. To wrap this all up, I am just going to make some quick styling changes here. I'm going to choose to change the height of my group header to be, we can choose it to be a fixed height here because that's okay. Let's choose it to be 80 pixels, which will sit it nicely at the top of our page and be nicely sized. I'm going to change the background. Actually, you know what? I'm going to keep it to be gray just so that I can see what I'm working with. I'll change it later. And lastly, I'm also just going to change the color of my button so that it aligns with the SurveyMonkey styling that we saw, which is this yellow color. So let me change it to be a nice yellow color. To do that, I'm going to head to my appearance tab, change the background color to be this yellow option that we're already given. And I'm also going to change the text color to be a nice, let's just go this nice black color, just so that it matches the styling of what we saw over on our SurveyMonkey, the actual application. And as you can see, we have our nice header. That looks great. So now that we've added our header, let's go ahead and start to add some content to our hero section. Now, if you recall, our hero section looked something like this. We had this large bit of text and this small bit of text and these two buttons. And then we had this image. Because we don't have any templates to work with, I'm not going to add this explore templates button. I'm just going to add this sign up for free button. But essentially what we have here is a hero element that if you can start to imagine this from a group perspective, we have a group of text and buttons and we have an image that are going to be side by side. So you might think that we might need to have a group container, a group row container here, which is correct. And then we have this text here, which will be text and a button in a column container. It all sounds a bit confusing, but let me show you how to do this nice and simply. Heading back across to our bubble editor, let's add another group underneath our header element. Now, because we set our container layout to be a column, it will just simply add our group below this. Let's add a heading here. So let's call this group hero, because this is our hero content. I'm going to head to my layout tab, and here I'm going to change the container layout to be a row, because we are going to put our text elements and our image elements side by side. We are also going to choose to make it a minimum width of 0 pixels. We are going to choose to uncheck the fit width to content, and we are going to leave the max width to be infinite, so that this group can be as little or as large as it requires to be, dependent on the browser that a viewer is visiting our app on. Now again, just briefly, I'm going to change the minimum height to be 400 pixels so that I can see what I'm working with. And again, I'm just going to change the background color just to be a flat color. Let's go a nice light red here. We are going to change this. This is just so that, again, we can see what we're working with. Next, we're not going to add any elements. We're actually going to add another group. We're going to add another 2 groups, as a matter of fact. So why we are going to do that is because we are going to put elements within these groups that are side by side, which are going to be our text elements and our button and our image. So let's go ahead and firstly add this next group, as you've seen earlier, because this is a row container. If I add 2 groups, it'll add them side by side. Let me show you that in practice. Before I do that, minimum width of 0, uncheck the fit width to content, make it maximum width. Let's make this one 300 pixels so that we can see what we're working with. I will also change the color of this. Let's choose a nice little, let's go a green color. Let's go a light green here. Now, as you can see, I have set the maximum width to be infinite, so it is as large as the browser needs to be. But if I were to add another group, let's take a look at what happens. This is pretty cool. If I drop it here and I make it a little bit bigger, let's just do the same thing that we've done before. It actually shares the width of this element of this row container, which is really cool. Let's make this also 300 pixels, and let's also change the color of this so that we can see what we're working with. But essentially, I'll make it a light blue, which is cool. Essentially what we have here is 2 groups that are side by side, that is within this wider group of our hero content, which is a row container, which we can then put elements within that as well. These are currently column containers, so if I were to add some text and some buttons, it would add them top to bottom. It all might sound super confusing, but what we're doing here is we are taking back a lot of control, and we are making our application super responsive. Let's see what happens if I change the width of our device here. It still all looks great. This is super powerful, guys. Really cool stuff that we're doing here. It might all seem a little bit confusing, and there's different colors and borders and boxes, but this is really cool. Now, as our first action, let's add that image. So if we can see here, we are going to add this image of this nice lady holding a cup of coffee with these nice prompts around it, which looks pretty cool. I like this image. Let's add this to our hero section. Scrolling across to our bubble editor, let's go ahead and add an image element to this green section here. Now, it's a column container layout, but that doesn't quite matter here because this is only going to have 1 element. I'm going to choose to upload a static image here. Okay, so the image is uploaded. It doesn't look too crazy. It's not super skewed, but it is a little small. So let me head to my layout tab. Let's see what happens if I make this element, let's say 600 pixels wide. It does skew and it does look a little bit weird. So let's undo that. What we're actually going to do is we're going to change the width and height of this temporarily to be the true width and height of this image, which is actually 1192 pixels wide by, this will be 1102 pixels high. And then if I click this keep aspect ratio fixed, it'll calculate to be 596 by 551. So we're going to keep it like this so that it doesn't skew or it doesn't change, but we are going to change the width of this a little bit. We are going to choose to uncheck this item to be fixed width so that it is responsive. we are going to choose it to be a minimum width of 0. However, we don't want it to be massive. We don't want to allow the user full control over this, because let's say, for example, let me show you what happens if we do. If this image does change like that, if it goes super small, that's not quite what we want. If it goes super large, that can go as big as it is forever. So let's actually make the max width of this 550 pixels. That way, if the browser size goes super large, it's not going to go crazy. This is just like a little bit of restriction, so that looks nice. Now I will be revisiting this shortly, so let's hold this thought. But next, let me go ahead and add my text elements and my button to the left-hand side of my hero section here. So let me head back to my UI builder part. I'm going to first and foremost add a text element here to this group. Let's call group E. Let's quickly just rename this so that we know what we're working with. Let's call this group left hero. And let's call this one right group hero. Nope, I'm going to head to my section here. Let's choose group right hero. Very important to name your elements. Very important to name your groups. You will notice that I did navigate to this group by clicking the group option in the layers tree here, or it used to be called the elements tree. Oh, there it is. It's called the elements tree. You can do that as well. So rather than actually clicking on the element in the UI, you can choose the layer or the element in the elements tree as well. Just a quick side note there. So let's get back to this section. Let's change this text. What is the text we are going to change it to? The text simply says, create surveys and forms quickly and confidently. That's a nice little bit of marketing. I'm going to hit Control C so that I can copy that. I'm going to scroll back and let's Control V. I'm on a Mac. Let's paste that there. Let's get rid of that space. And as you can see, it's added that text, which looks great. Now, we will need to add some styling to this to make it look like a header. I'm going to remove the styling here so that I can make it fully custom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose it to be, this is pretty important, so let's make it super large. Let's make it 36 pixels. Let's also change the weight. Now to make it bold, you could choose either this 700 bold or you could choose to just make it bold. I'm going to choose this 700 weight to give myself a little bit more control. I will adjust the margin a little bit shortly to make sure that it doesn't sit directly on the edges of my group. But for now, let me go ahead and add my second bit of text, which is that subheading. So if I drag another text element here, if I scroll back across to this SurveyMonkey page, I'm going to copy this text. I'm then going to scroll back and I'm going to paste that text in this box here. Build and customize your own high quality surveys and forms in minutes. Invite your team to collaborate too. That looks great. Let's choose to make this 18 pixels to make it a little bit larger. I'm okay with the weight of this. This is okay to just be normal, a normal font. Don't want it to be bold or anything. So that looks okay for now. Lastly, we are going to add our button. If we slide across, we can see that this button says sign up free. It is also a little bit larger to make it stand out a little bit, which I like. So let's do that on our end too. So let's change the label of this button to be sign up free. And let's also make it a little bit larger. So if I head to my layout tab, we aren't going to choose to fit the width of this button to its content. As you can see, it's only adding a little bit of margin around this text to make it that size. If we uncheck this box, it makes it full width, which isn't quite what we want to do. Let's choose to make this 250 pixels wide, which makes it that large size that we like. So I think that looks great. Unfortunately, as we can see here, it has stacked all of these elements completely on top of each other because this is a column container layout and we haven't added any margin. So let's do that. But first, I'm actually going to, first and foremost, I'm actually going to group all of these elements together. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want them to all have the same margin relative to our gray group here. So if I click on this text element and if I go shift and select these three elements, I've selected these three elements here. You can also just quickly, you can also do this in the elements tree. I'm going to right click here and I'm going to choose to group these elements in a column container. So this is a group within our larger group, which is within a larger group, which is within a larger group. It might all seem a little bit crazy, but what we can do here is this group, which we're just going to call, let's call this text and button, because this is a group of texts and buttons. Let's add some margin to this entire group. Let's say we are simply, just to keep it consistent, let's add 20 pixels of margin to the top, 20 to the bottom, 20 to the left, and 20 to the right. Now, what we are also going to do is we are going to center this group of texts and buttons within the gray group. So as at the moment, it is aligned at the top of our group. If I choose to change the vertical alignment of this left hero group, not of the text and button groups, I'm going to choose the left hero group. I'm going to choose to center align this container or the elements within this container within this group. So as you can see, it has added some space at the top and space at the bottom, which all looks nice and centers it from a vertical perspective, and that all looks pretty nice. Now let's go ahead and we are going to add some margins to our text elements. Now for this heading or for this large bit of text, I don't need to add some margin to the top or to the left or to the right because I've already done that. I only need to add some margin to the bottom. So let's add 10 pixels of margin to the bottom of that heading, that large bit of text, just to add some nice spacing between the subheading or that bit of normal text there. I'm going to do the same thing for this text element. This time I'm going to add 20 pixels of margin to the bottom, just to add some nice spacing between that and the sign up free button that we see there. Now, what we can also do, because we've set groups within groups, we can again control the alignment or the spacing of this group within the grander scheme of the hero container that we see here. So I want to I'm going to align these vertically on the same level. I'm going to align this group left hero centered vertically in this group hero. It might seem a little bit confusing, but let me just show you. If I choose this vertical alignment section here, if I choose to center it, essentially what it does is it sits it nicely in the center of this element, which then makes it look nice relative to this image. This is just another great thing about having these groups and container layouts. You have full control of how it looks on your page, but it is also, again, responsive. We can also ensure that no matter the size or the width of the page or the browser that the user is visiting our site on, it looks great. I have just noticed that it doesn't quite have the same effect for our image, so let me do the same thing for our image element. I'm going to head back to my UI builder. I'm going to also I'm not going to choose to center align the image. I'm going to center align the group. Let's also vertically center align this here. I'm also just going to choose to do the same thing for the container alignment for the image within it, just so that when we go back to our responsive tab, that looks perfect. That looks really nice. That's really cool. Great work. Now, if you recall, a few moments ago, I did say I was going to come back to the width of this image, and let me show you why. So if our device is really small, if it's just a mobile phone like this, you can see that it starts to skew and it starts to not have the desired result that we want. If it's too skinny, we don't quite want them to sit side by side. We might want to make this change dynamically. Again, this is the power of responsive design. So what ideally I would like to do is I would like to, when this group on the left starts to get a little bit small, I'd like it to not change. I don't want it to get any skinnier than this essentially. I don't want it to get any smaller. So let's look at this size here, which I think looks pretty nice. As we can see on the left side here, our page is 708 pixels wide. If I do some quick maths, I'd say that 708 pixels divided by 2 is 356. I did just look that up. So essentially what we have here is we have two groups side by side that are 356 pixels. I can also just confirm that, goodness me, it's actually 354 pixels at the moment. I'm unsure why that is. My maths. Sorry guys, 354 pixels, not 356. So what we can do here is we can essentially say that whenever our group is 354 pixels, we don't want it to get any smaller than that. So let's make that a reality and let's see what happens when we change this. When I make the minimum width of this group to be 354 pixels, it does skew a little bit, but just don't worry about that. When the page gets below 708 pixels, we don't want it to get any smaller than that. So let's see what happens if I also do the same thing for this group here. If I also make it 354 pixels and as a minimum width, 354, that starts to look nice. Let's see what happens if our page gets smaller than 708 pixels. They actually move top to bottom. How cool is that? So this is responsive design again in action. If the user were to be visiting our site on a mobile, this is what they would see. They would see something much nicer. The elements would then stack from top to bottom, which I think looks fantastic. And it's pretty common to what you'd see on a mobile device. To be honest, it's nothing super groundbreaking what I've done, but just good practice. So this is the power of responsive design and setting minimum and maximum widths. Now, if I, let's say for example, if I go to a super wide page, it still doesn't look awesome. So what I can do just for good practice, I'm also going to set some maximum widths for this group as well. If I go ahead and I click on my group text and button group, now if I set the maximum width to say, let's be 550 pixels, if I were to just do what I did and change the width to be super massive, it would stay in this nice 4-line plus button arrangement here. It does go, the minimum width that we set, but then it also just has a bit more control, similar to what we did by setting a max width for our image. But what it's doing is it's actually going to the left. It's going far away, which I kind of don't want. So what I can do here is I can actually choose to change the horizontal alignment of this group to be in the left of this group. So as we can see, if we start to get a little bit wide and a little bit crazy, it does just stay nice and close to our image, and it center aligns it essentially in the grander scheme, no matter how big or small the browser is that the user is visiting our application on. So again, I love the power of responsive design. I think it is fantastic, and it gives us so much control over our application. That's why I love it so much, and that's why I spend a lot of time in this module. Okay, so we are nearly done. What I'm going to do as a final step is I'm going to remove all of our colors so that we can have something as a semi-finished product, just to wrap this all up nicely. Now, if we scroll across, we see that our header color is white, and our hero section has this light gray background. So let's change that in our experience as well. Let's change the flat background color of our header to be just a white, which is of a color code FFFFF. Let's get rid of all of these colors. These were only temporary, so we knew what we were working with. So if we choose this group, we can choose it to be, we can actually choose no background color if we like. So I'm going to choose that option. Let's do the same for this group left hero, no color. Now I can change this group hero background to be the same gray that we saw on the actual SurveyMonkey app. And the color code for that is F7, F7, F7. That looks pretty cool. As you can see, it is nice and responsive. When we change it and when we change the height of it, it looks really nice. It aligns with what is in the current SurveyMonkey marketing page, which looks really cool. Guys, I think we've done a really good job here. Awesome work. I do just want to take this opportunity to show one cool final feature, and that is essentially the preview section of our bubble editor. If I click this preview button here, I can actually see what this page would look like without all the editing capabilities. It's a static page, but it gives a good preview of what our users would see. So if I hit preview, it takes me to another browser or another tab here, and we can see this is what our users would see if they were viewing this page on the device that I'm on, which is on a desktop, which I think that looks pretty cool. Now, I will say there is one additional step that we'll have to do with this page, but we're not going to cover it in this module, and that is to essentially make all of our buttons clickable and actionable. We want to make it so that whenever, let's say, the sign up button is clicked, it'll go through to our registration page. We're going to do that after we create our registration page. So just a quick note that we aren't fully done with this. We will come back to this in a few modules time. But let's take this opportunity to check off this first feature that we have completed in our Notion checklist. We have designed the marketing homepage. We've built out our header menu. We designed our hero section, and boy, oh boy, did we make this page responsive. This module has been a great building block for the rest of our features, because we are going to employ a lot of these rules of thumb in terms of making an element minimum width and maximum width of 0 and infinite, and making column and row container layouts to make our page fully responsive. This was a great introduction to this course. And as we can see, we have got some design elements sorted, and we are going to make our app look and operate really cool. Throughout the next module, I'm going to teach you exactly how you can register new user accounts inside of your app. So that way, of course, people can sign up and use your survey builder. Within this module, we're going to build out our own user registration feature. So that way, of course, new users can sign up to your platform and then go on to use your app. Returning to our Notion checklist for our SurveyMonkey clone app build, the next thing on our list of features is to create a registration page. Now this will allow new users to register an account within our application. Now, as you can see, there are a number of important sections within this module today. However, the first thing that I want to do is showcase the actual SurveyMonkey user registration page so we can get a feel of what we're going to build in our application. Now this page structure is pretty simple. We simply have the SurveyMonkey logo at the top, followed by this white box, which is a group of elements to allow the user to start their journey to create their user account. This includes a navigation to allow the user to go to the login page rather than the registration page if they already have an account. There's this heading call to action to create an account. There is this email address input box here. I've just placed a shane@buildingwithbubble.com email address just as an example to show the journey. And there are also these checkboxes to allow the user to agree to the terms of use and privacy notice, as well as this checkbox to agree to opt in to some marketing materials such as emails and the like. You will notice that as I click this box to agree to the terms of use, this does activate the next button here, which will allow me to continue on my journey to create a user account. This is a bit of a condition that the user has to agree to the terms of use before they continue, which we might build into our application as well. You will notice there are these 5 options to register an account or sign up with your Facebook account or your Google account. However, that's a bit of out of scope for our use case, so we're not going to include this for our app build. Now, you will notice that when I click next to take the next step, it doesn't load a new page. It simply changes the experience to allow the user to create a password. We're going to be doing this same thing. We're not going to be taking the user to a new page to create a password. This is essentially a new state. Now, states are something that we're going to use quite a bit for our SurveyMonkey clone build. So I will get into it shortly, but essentially here, I just wanted to show the workflow that we'll be following, allowing the user to enter their email address, agree to some terms of use, and then create a new password and also confirm that password just to ensure that there isn't any spelling mistakes or they're not creating a password that they're not going to remember. If I were to enter my password and confirm it, I would then click this button to create my account. I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to create this account, but I just wanted to show this workflow and how SurveyMonkey do it, because this is essentially what we're going to be doing in our application. So let's get started. Let's head back, not to our Notion checklist, let's head to our Bubble editor. We've just created this index page in the last module. Let's get started by creating a new page. And this page is going to be our registration page. To do this, to create a new page, let's simply head to the top left-hand section of our Bubble editor. And I'm going to click this drop down and I'm going to choose to add a new page. Now, when I click this, we'll see this dialog box to give our page a new name. We're just going to call this page our registration page. This is quite important as well because this page name is what will be the slug at the end of our URL for this page. So if you can imagine, if this were to be the SurveyMonkey.com domain, it would be SurveyMonkey.com/registration. And I can choose to clone this from an existing page. So for example, I could choose to clone this from the existing index page and it would essentially take all of these elements and put them across in our new page. However, I'm going to create this from scratch. So I'm going to leave this blank and just simply hit create. So here we have our new blank canvas for our registration page. The first thing that I'm going to do, and the first thing I'm going to do for essentially any page, is first and foremost, I'm going to change the container layout of this page to be a column. And the reason I'm going to do this is, of course, because we want to stack our elements on this page from top to bottom. This means that when we add something like our logo, the white box that we saw in the SurveyMonkey page will sit below that and just look how we want it to look. And it'll give us a lot of control from a responsive perspective. And it's just the best practice that we're going to follow for essentially our entire app build. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the background of this registration page. If you recall, there was a slightly gray background for our SurveyMonkey example. So what I'm going to do, just to keep it consistent, I'm actually just going to briefly head back to my index page, and I'm going to copy, or I'm essentially going to find the color code for this group to find this nice gray color. Now, if I head to my appearance tab, you can see that the color code is F7, F7, F7. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to head back to my registration page, and I'm going to click on the white canvas and change this background color to be that F7, F7, F7 color code. Now, as you can see, it's just changed to this nice light gray, which is just a nice little styling touch that we're adding here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my SurveyMonkey logo. Now, to do that, I'm going to simply head to my image element from this visual elements section here and drag it onto my page. And as similar to what we've done before, because this is a column container layout, it'll essentially add it to the top of our page for us to then add some margin and place how we want it to be. So let's upload an image. A quick way to add images that we've used before is just to head, once again, I'm going to head back to my index page. Now I'm going to copy this URL that I uploaded earlier, just so that we use the same image for our registration page. So in this image element, all I have to do is then paste that dynamic image link, click enter, and it's added it to our page. Now, if you recall from our last module, we did want to choose the option to keep our aspect ratio fixed just to make sure this image not skew like you're seeing it now. And that aspect ratio was 44:7. This will allow us to have some control over the size and the positioning of this element without it skewing or going like crazy, or us having to do any calculations to make the width and height what we want it to be. So I've just added that aspect ratio. I'm happy with the width of 320, so I'm actually going to leave that as it is for now, which is fine by me. Now, before I position this image where I want it to be essentially on my page, I'm actually going to skip a step and I'm going to add my group container, which is essentially the white section that we saw on the SurveyMonkey page, where we are going to input our elements, our text elements, or our input elements, or our buttons, or our checkboxes for the user to enter their details and start that user registration journey. So for this group, I'm going to first and foremost just make it a little bit larger. I'm going to choose it to be a minimum width of 0 and a maximum width this time of 400 pixels. I'm also going to choose to uncheck this fit width to content option. So as you can see, it makes it this nice wide box, which is what we want it to be. And while I'm here, I'm also going to do the same thing just temporarily for the height of this box. So let's go a maximum height of 400. Let's also choose not to fit the height of the content just so that we can see what we're working with for the time being. Now, while I'm here, I might just briefly add 20 pixels of margin to the top of this box just to add some spacing between the logo and our group. I'm also going to change the appearance to just be a white background, which is what we saw again on the SurveyMonkey page. It's automatically created at this plain white color, which is fine. And then lastly, just for good practice, I'm also going to just rename this group. So this can be registration details is this group. Now, if you recall me saying that I was skipping a step, let me take this opportunity to explain why. Now, I like this look of the SurveyMonkey logo being left aligned in line with the left of this group here. If I were to choose to then center align this individual element on our page and then this group in the middle of our page as well, I like to choose this one, it will actually put them on top of each other and center align them both. I lose that opportunity to align the left of this image with the left of this group. What I'll want to do instead is I'm going to actually just choose to move back, and I'm going to click my SurveyMonkey image, and I'm going to choose to click the white group as well. I'm actually going to group these in their own column container layout. Now, it does quickly, as you've seen, just remove the height settings that I said earlier. So if I simply choose to uncheck the height content box here, and I choose to make the maximum width 400 pixels, I'm going to remove this and uncheck this box. That gives us the width that we set earlier. If I now, for my entire group, if I now center align this, you can see we've achieved that goal of aligning the left of our image to the left of our group there. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is add some margin to the top of this group. So let's say if I add, let's say 80 pixels of margin, just for safety, I'm going to add 20 pixels to the left and 20 to the right. Let's also just add 20 to the bottom. This will make it really nice and responsive. So if I head to my responsive tab, if I change the width here, you can see that if the user is on a mobile device, it does look a little bit nicer. It does not sit directly on the edges or the borders of our device, and it looks pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with that. So let me head back to the UI Builder tab, and let's start to add some elements into our this group registration white box here. What I might quickly do, I might just add just a light gray border to this box, just to add a little bit more styling here. And to do that, I simply have to head to this border style, drop down and just select solid. It's giving me a 1 pixel light gray or maybe dark gray color for my border. Let's see how that looks. I think that looks pretty good, so I'm going to leave that as is for now, which is fine. So let's add the text elements that we saw back on the SurveyMonkey page to our registration page. The first one was a navigation element, which was to allow the user to go to the actual login page if they already had an account. So let's add a text element first and foremost. Let's simply say here, already have an account. Now I'm only going to have this in this text box because I'm going to add another text box in a moment, which is going to sit beside this one to have the actual link to say login, which will actually be the clickable navigation element. But first, what I actually have to do is if I were to add another text element, because we have set, well, we didn't set it, it actually did it automatically, this group to be column layout, it's set it, of course, below this text element. So let's just take a moment to change this text to say login. If I'm sure you've all seen links before on the internet, let me just quickly add some font color here just to make it known that it's a link. Now the light blue color that I'm going to choose is this color code 007FAA, which gives it this nice blue color if you'd like to copy that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to group these elements. If I choose to click them both, I'm going to group these elements in their own row container. Now, as you can see, what this has then done is it has stacked them side by side in a row container. It has stacked them exactly side by side. So let me click on this login text element, and I'm going to add 5 pixels of margin to the left just to add some spacing in between them. That's fine. Now, what I'm now going to do is I'm actually going to, if you recall how it looked on the SurveyMonkey page, let me just show you. If I go back, it sat this element on the left-hand side of this group. So if I scroll back across, let's click on our group C. We have to rename our groups just to keep it all consistent. Let's call this login navigation, just so that when we actually do this in our, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when we add this to our workflow, we know exactly where the group is. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to choose to horizontally align this group to the left of our registration details group. I'm also going to add some margin to this login navigation group. Let's add 20 pixels margin to the top and 20 to the right. And I'm also going to, just so that it sits nicely and has some spacing around it, let's add 20 to the left and 20 to the bottom as well. And I'm also going to choose to set a minimum height of 0 so that the group collapses nicely around the text elements. And that just sits nicely within this registration details group. Next, let's add our heading text element to give the user a bit of a call to action to create an account. To do that, I'm going to simply drag a text element into my group here. And let's say here we're wanting the user to create an account. Now, as this is a heading, let's make it a little bit bigger. So let's make this, let's choose to make this 24 pixels. Let's also, again, let's add some margin. So we're going to, let's say, there's already some margin at the top because we have the margin from this text, login navigation group. So we don't need to add any margin at the top. Let's simply add 20 to the left, 20 to the right, and let's also add 20 to the bottom so that when we add our next element, it sits below that pretty nicely. Next, we are going to add our inputs. Now, before we add our inputs, we need to add a bit of a heading for our input just so the user knows exactly what they're adding here. Now, if you recall back on the SurveyMonkey registration page, the only bit of information that SurveyMonkey was asking users to input was their email address. However, if you recall back to our data tab here, for our user, we also want to collect their name as well as their company name, which is a little bit separate. This is their company name. So what we actually want to do in our registration experience is have 3 input elements. We want to have the user's name, the user's company name, and the user's email address. We actually want to add these 3 input elements into our account creation experience. So first and foremost, let's add a heading for the input element. Let's call this one name because we want to collect the user's name. As this is a heading, we won't make this one any larger. We'll simply just bold this. Let's also add some margin. Let's add 20 to the left, 20 to the right, and let's this time only add 10 pixels of margin to the bottom because here we'll be adding an input element. Now we haven't yet added any input elements into our application yet. So this will be new for a lot of people. So with the elements in Bubble, so far we've only sort of been adding some visual elements, which are essentially static, which we have the control of what we want to display in these visual elements. We have our containers, which makes up the structure of our page. But then there's this next classification, which is input forms. Now this is essentially a really cool part of Bubble and any application. And this is where it turns our application from a static experience to, I guess you can call it an active one or a dynamic one, where we're allowing users to create or to input some data into our application to then save to our database. And this is how it's done with these input forms. Now, as you can see, there are a number of options. We can add some checkboxes and drop downs and search boxes and the like. However, if I choose this input, which is a single line input, let's take a look at what happens when I add this to my group. If I add it underneath my name text element there, it adds this input here, which is essentially pre-styled and looks pretty cool. We essentially have this gray border, this wording here that says type here, which is actually called placeholder text. And then we can set some things like some initial content, which we might touch on a little bit later. But we can essentially create an element where the user can then interact with our application and enter in their own information. So that's an input element. The first thing that I'm going to do, which I should do for every single element, is give it a name. So let's call this input name. Now this will allow me to identify this element in my workflow tab and elements tree and all the like. I'm going to now add some styling just so we can see it in its full glory. Let me first and foremost, I'm actually going to choose to uncheck this to be fixed width. I'm going to choose it to be a minimum width of 0 so it can shrink and grow depending on the device that our user is visiting our page on. I'm going to also add 20 pixels of margin to the left, 20 to the right, and I'm going to again add only 10 to the bottom just so that it sits nicely again. It's aligned with the rest of our elements and it sits off the group, off the borders of the group rather, and I think that looks really nice. Now, if we were to head again, let's go to our preview of our application. Let's take a look at what I mean by saying that this is an active element. I can interact with this. Here, let's say there's this input element. If I hover over it, we can see this nice green border. I can actually then input some text, or if it's an image uploader, I can upload an image or anything of the like, but I can interact with these elements. So input elements are really cool. What I'm going to do in a few moments time is I'm actually going to select and I'm going to choose to basically store or save what data, what information the user will put into this input element into my database. That's a really cool part of it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to our Bubble editor and let's start to add our other inputs. Now, I am also wanting to add a place for the user to enter their company's name as well as their email address. So there's still 2 input elements that I'm going to add. But I'm going to do a bit of a shortcut. I'm going to select to click this name text element as well as the input element. I'm going to copy and I'm going to actually paste this. Now what it's done, of course, it's pasted it with the same text, with the same headings, with the same titles, with the same margins and the like into a new element. Which is just a nice way to keep some consistency and do a bit of a shortcut. Let me do the same thing for my third input element. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, this input title is input name. This one is input name copy. Now we need to ensure, this is absolutely critical that we give it the right name. What we're going to do, we're going to first and foremost rename this text element to say, we're going to call this company name. And then it's the really important part, I'm going to have to change the title or the heading of this to be input company name. That's super important, guys. Very important. I can't stress that enough. Now I'm also going to do the same for this text here. I'm going to say email address because this is where we're going to ask our user to enter their email, not their address, their address. Is it double D for address? I think it is. Okay. And let's also do the same for this input. Let's say that this is called email address. So now that we have our 3 input elements for our user registration group here, the next thing that we're going to add is first and foremost a checkbox, which is going to be the agreement or the consent to the privacy notice checkbox interactive element there, as well as our button for the user to continue their journey and create a password. So let's actually take this moment to head back. Let's see this list of features. We can first say that yes, we have created our user registration page. So let's just make sure that we tick that off just while we're here. And then you can see that the text that we want to have the user click and agree to is just saying, you agree to the terms of use and privacy notice. So let's copy this. Now I'm going to uncheck that. I'm going to scroll back across to my bubble editor and let's add another element. Let's add a checkbox. Let me just first check that, yes, a maximum, okay. So our maximum height here is 400 pixels. Now, if you can imagine if I were to add a checkbox, because we have a maximum height, if we were to then, let's say, add another checkbox, it starts to go outside of our group, and that's because we've set a maximum height. So let me first and foremost, I'm actually just going to get rid of these. I'm going to change the layout in the layout tab here. I'm going to change the maximum height not to be 400 pixels, but instead to be fit to the content. So this essentially means that any content that we add to this group, the height is going to continue to grow. Now let me add my checkbox, and I'm going to just add some margin to the bottom just to show what I mean. So if I add some margin to the bottom, the size of this group grows. So that's just a quick little note about some heights for our elements. Let me get rid of this. Now let me add that data to my checkbox. Now checkboxes are again an input element, which is really cool. Let's change the text for our checkbox to be what we saw there. So I agree, you agree to the terms of use and privacy notice. Now I'm going to explain essentially what part or what role this element has to play in our experience. But firstly, let me add some styling. I'm going to just make this 14 font size. I'm going to as well choose not to have this element as fixed width. We're going to remove the minimum width. And I'm going to again add some margin, let's say 20 to the left, 20 to the right, just so that it sits nicely around there. And I'm also going to add, let's add 10 pixels of margin to the bottom as well. Now, if you recall in the SurveyMonkey experience, the next or the button to continue the journey came alive when this button was clicked. So there's a really cool feature or function in Bubble that we can set here, which are conditions. Now keep that in mind as I add my button. So let me next add my button to this group. I'm going to choose to add this button. Let's add some styling. We're first and foremost just going to call this next. Let's add some styling. Let's choose not to fit the width to the content. Let's make it full width. I'm also going to choose to add some styling. Let's say it is 20 to the left, 20 to the right. Let's add, because this is the final element, let's add 20 pixels to the bottom just so that it fits nicely. Let's ask, you know what, this looks a little bit close, so I'm actually going to choose to make this 20 pixels of margin at the bottom here. And I'm going to choose for this element 20 pixels of margin here as well, just so that it fits there's a little bit more spacing. Just a quick little note there. Now, if you recall back on our SurveyMonkey, the actual registration page, when the user landed on the page, the green next button was sort of grayed out. It looked inactive. However, when they clicked and agreed to the terms of use, it came alive and it was clickable. So let's add that functionality to our user registration page. Now to do that, we're going to use something called a condition. Now, let me explain how to do that. I've clicked on this button next element here, and in my property editor, if I head to this conditional tab here, it gives me an option to add some, let's say some styling or some functionality to this button dependent on something else that's happening within our application. So essentially what we're trying to say here is that when this button is unchecked, We want this to be grayed out and unclickable. So let me show you how we're going to do that. Let's define this condition and let's choose to say that when this element, this checkbox is unchecked, we don't want this to be clickable and we want it to be slightly discolored. So the way to do that, if I click this gray button here, now when we do that, we're greeted with this drop down where we can choose some data sources or some elements. This is essentially the dynamic nature of Bubble, which is really cool. Essentially what we're trying to say is that when this element, so this element checkbox, you agree to the terms, which is this one here, you agree. When this checkbox element, now the state of this, we want to say when it isn't checked, which again, this is really cool stuff here. When the checkbox isn't checked, we want some things to happen. We want some properties within this element to be changed. So what are those properties? Well, first and foremost, we don't want it to be clickable. You cannot click this element if the checkbox isn't checked. So this element isn't clickable. Yes, we have to make sure that we tick that. We also want to discolor it a bit. So when checkbox isn't checked, we also want to, let's make the opacity 50%. If you're not familiar with opacity, it means see-through. So we want our element to be 50% see-through to just give it a bit of a light green color rather than this full green. Now, what this essentially means is that when it is clicked, when the checkbox element is checked, this element is clickable and the opacity is 100, which means it's this nice green color. So with these conditions, we can either set multiple or one or the other. When it meets these conditions, it's in this certain state. So let me show you what I mean here. Let's click the preview, and here we can see we've landed on the page, and as you can see, this next button is this light green, and we can't click it. We can't click it at the moment anyway because we haven't set a workflow. But when this agreement checkbox is ticked, it comes alive and it is clickable. So they are conditions, and they are a really, really, really cool feature of Bubble and really easy to use. So as you've seen, that was super easy. Now, taking a look at this, I think we're pretty close to starting the next step to allow the user to create a password. Now, to create this experience where the user clicks next and they see a new group or a new box here rather than go to a new page, we have to deal with states. Now, I said at the start of this module how awesome states were and that we're going to use states a lot in this course. And let me explain what a state is first and foremost. States are essentially that. They have the states of the page. Now, let me use an example. At the moment, this page is in the state of showing this registration details box. It is wanting to collect this information. That is the state this page is currently in. If we want to allow the user to store their passwords, it would be in a different state. It would say the state is collecting passwords. We can dynamically show content on our page dependent on that state. So for an example, if this page is in the state of details, let's call it, it will show this box. When it's in the state of password, it will show a different box. Now let me show you how to do that. Let's say that the state of this registration page will either be details or password. Now to do that, to set some states, I have to head to this property editor for the page. So you can set some states to be these elements, but I'm going to choose it to be the page. To set a state, we have to hover over this I button here. And in this element inspector, we can choose to add some custom states. Now to add a new custom state, I click this text and I can give my state a name. Let's call the name group because we are going to want to show a different group whenever we change our states. Now this state type will be text. We can get really dynamic here, but let me just keep it simple and say it is text, and let's hit create. Now, this will then allow us to set some values, some text values to identify what our state is. So for this default value, essentially when this page is loaded, we want to have it in this state at the moment. So let's call this default value details. It is in the state of details when this page is loaded, and we want this to showcase this box. So let's say that whenever the state of this page is details, we want to show this box. Now to do that, we are going to again set a condition. So let's call this group details because this is the group that we want to show when the details state is set. Now to do that, we're going to define a condition when, let's scroll all the way down. Now let's scroll here, when registration, which is the element of the page, when registrations group, so I'm not choosing a state here, I'm choosing a custom state, when the page registrations group is details, just the text details because we want it to be a text element, the text state rather. When the state text is details, we want this element to be visible. Check. Now, when the page registration, when the group state is password, we'll want that element to be visible and we won't want this element to be visible. So let me just make that change here. So let's define another condition. Let's say when registrations group is password, let's say that this element is visible. No, this element is not visible. So that is essentially saying that when it's details, we want to see it. When it's password, we don't want to see it. Now, one additional thing to add is that in our layout tab, we want to say that when it is hidden, we want to collapse this, which essentially means we don't want to see it. We want to collapse it. If we didn't choose that, then this space would be held. I'm not going to bother explaining that because you might actually run into this in a real world case. Just make sure that it's collapsed when it's hidden. So now that we've set that and I've explained states, let's go ahead and let's create our new group. Let's create our group password. So this is our group details. Gonna skip a step. Let's copy and paste this group and we are calling this group password. Now, there are a lot of things that I just have to change straight off the bat because I've just copied and pasted and skipped a few steps. But as you can see, this does look a little bit strange. It's placed it over here. So that's just simply just a quick change here. The minimum height of our group is 767. So let's change this to be 1200, for example. That'll make it a lot bigger and that will make it look a bit more nice to see. We can actually also hide this group so we can see what we're working with. So let me choose to hide this group. And this here we can see our group details copy, which is our group, what we are calling password. So I know that was all a little bit hard to explain, but that's just a way to make sure that we can see what we're working with. So we know right now that we are dealing with group password. Now, just to show what I'm working with, let's just change this. So let's change this text element so that we can preview this and explain. I can explain what I mean. So let's say here we are wanting our user to set a password. Let's get rid of this text here. Let's get rid of this group login navigation. Let's add 20 pixels of margin to the top. I'm simply just doing this so that I can show what I'm talking about. So let's make a condition here where when the page registrations group state is details, we don't want to see this element. We instead want to see the password group. We want to see this element here. So when the registration group is password, we want to see this group. We don't want to see the details group. Again, we want to ensure that this is hidden when it's not seen. But here we also want to choose to not see this on page load. Because this is the second step in the journey, we want to make sure that we uncheck this box to say that the element is visible on page load. Now, before I preview this, I actually have to create a workflow to change the state of my page. Now here, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to the workflow tab. That is this second icon here underneath the design icon there. We can see we are taken to our workflow tab. Now to add workflows, there are two ways we can do this. We can choose this dotted box here to add an event, and we can choose to say that when this element is clicked or when the user's logged in or something custom. We can choose to start our workflow, or we can actually start the workflow by clicking on an element and choosing to add a workflow here. Now, before I do that, let me just explain how awesome workflows are. With coding, creating workflows is pretty difficult. With all the if else, with all the code, it's pretty crazy. With Bubble makes setting workflows super simple, and I'm really excited to show you guys how to do it. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's create a workflow that when back on our details group here, whenever this button next is clicked, we want to start a workflow. So let's do that. Let's put this into reality. So whenever this element is clicked, we want to add a workflow. Now, when we do that, it heads directly straight to my workflow tab here. And it essentially says when button next is clicked, when that button that we set there is clicked, we want these things to happen. Now, here we can set some parameters or some conditions, but we're going to maybe do that in another instance. However, here we just want to say that whenever the button next is clicked, we want to change the state of our page. We want to change it from details to password. Doing that is really easy and really cool. So here, all I have to do is click here to add an action. And I'm greeted with this drop down where I can choose a bunch of different options or workflows or actions to do. We will cover a fair few of these throughout this course. However, what I'm essentially wanting to do is I'm going to change the state of my page. I can choose to find this in the correct location, or I can choose to search for it. So if I just write the word state, I can choose to set the state of an element. Now, when I click this option, it then brings up this property editor, or this action editor, we'll call it, where we can choose the element and we can choose the state that we want it to be. So whenever that button next is clicked, we want the page, the registration page is our element. The custom state is the group, and the value that we want to change it to is password. Let me show you how to do this. So if I say I want the value to be password, that means that whatever state it is, whenever that next button is clicked, it is going to set the state of the page to be password, which is really, really cool. Now, let's test this and see if it works. So back in our design tab, we essentially want to click this next button and we want to change the state of our page to be group password. Let's preview this. Back in our preview page, let's just check this box so that it becomes actionable. This essentially will start the workflow. When I click next, hopefully it will change this box or this group to those handful of changes that we made. Just changing, it should get rid of this account navigation, the login navigation element here, and it'll say set a password here. Let's see if that happens. Fingers crossed. It does. Fantastic. What we've done is we've changed the state of the page to be password, and we are now showing the password group here on the screen for our users. Now, what I now want to do just to complete the loop is I want to add a back button to allow the user to change the state back to details so that if they want to go back or forth, they can do so. So I'm going to add underneath in my, my group password, I'm actually going to just add another group or a bit of text where I say back. Now, what I'm going to actually do here, I'm going to add a group here because what I want to add in this group, I want to add an icon and a text element. So I'm essentially wanting to have a little bit of an arrow and then the word back. So let me show you how to do that. First and foremost, I'm going to make this a little bit wider so that I can see what I'm working with. Actually, let's just uncheck this fit with the content box. Now I want to add an icon here. So if I scroll up into my visual elements, I can choose to add an icon. Now these are a really, really cool set of graphic elements, which are essentially, just as they are, they're icons to make our app just look really cool and just not just be text and lines and logos. These are really cool and dynamic. So within this icon set here, I can choose from a bunch here, and I could choose from different sets and different styles. So really, really big choice of options here. But what I can do as well, I can simply just, if I type the word arrow, let's see what comes up. Okay, this one looks cool. I'm going to add this as my icons. I just want to say, go back to the previous page. Let me add a text element to sit next to that. Of course, I have to change this to be a row container. And I'm going to choose to change this text element just to say back. Now, while I'm here, let me add some styling to my groups. So I'm first going to just choose to fit the width to the content again, just so that it looks nice and fits well. I'm going to select my back text and I'm going to vertically align it in the center. I'm going to do the same for my icon in the center so that they align nicely. And I'm then going to change the color to be that same link color that I set earlier, which that color code was 007 FAA. Okay, that's that nice blue. I'm going to do the same for my text element. It is again 007 FAA. And I'm also going to bold this text as well, just so that it looks nice and it stands out pretty nice as well. Now, lastly, I'm going to add some margin. Let's add 20 pixels to the left, 20 to the top. I might as well add 20 to the right just to be safe here. And there, as we can see, we have some nice spacing around our group. Now, what I want to do now is I want to make sure that whenever this group, not either of the individual elements are clicked. When either is clicked within this group section here, that's what I want to do to start the workflow. So if I click this group, I can then say that whenever this group is clicked, whenever any space within this group is clicked, we are going to start our workflow. Let me just, while I'm here, I'm actually just going to get rid of my minimum height just so that it fits a little bit nicer. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to head to my appearance tab and I'm going to add the workflow. Whenever group E, guys, let's change this. We have to get in the right habits. When group back, let's call this group back. When group back is clicked, we want to set the state. We want to set the state of an element. We want the element of registration, the page, we want the page groups to be details. So let's see this in action. When our users, when they first and foremost, when they click this create an account, when they click next here, the page is currently details. When they click next, the page is going to be password. And then when they click back, the state is again going to be details. That is a cool bit of interactivity. I'm really happy with that. That looks great. What we're going to do is we're going to complete the adding of our elements. Let me just quickly get rid of this details group so we can see what we're working with. I'm now going to set this to be our password and our confirm password fields here. So let's rename this text. Let's say enter a password. And before I move on, I'm just going to say for this text, let's say confirm a password. And I'm going to get rid of this email address text here, this input here. And now let's rename here. So let's rename these inputs. So this is called password and this is called password confirm input. Password confirm. Now what we're also going to do, we're going to get rid of this checkbox, but we're actually going to put another text element, like a text element here because we're going to write something, but I'll explain that shortly. Now, whenever dealing with passwords, might just be a bit of a personal preference, but I like to make sure that our users create passwords that are strong and that are they're actually secure. Because especially with our application or a lot of applications, we're storing pretty sensitive information and we don't want that to get in the hands of the wrong people. Particularly nowadays with cybersecurity being top of mind for a lot of organizations, we want to make sure that our applications are secure. Now, to put that into effect in our application, what we're going to set is a password policy. Now to do that, I'm going to head to my settings page. I'm going to just quickly, this is the first time we're getting to our settings page. So this is our, this gear icon allows us to go to our settings section of Bubble. And here there are a lot of different settings sections, but I'm going to stick to general for now. Now here I can actually choose to set a password policy. If I scroll down here, I can see this define a password policy section here. If that was unchecked, we can allow our users to create any password. It could be 2 letters for all we know, or even 1 letter. However, we want to set some conditions in place so that if the user's password that they set doesn't meet our password policy, they cannot proceed. So let's put that into action. Define a password policy? Yes, we want to do that. Here we can set a minimum password length. So this is the characters that the password has to be a minimum of. I'm going to choose 6, that's pretty common. We'll require a number. Let's say yes, require a capital letter, yes. And why not? Let's also require them to set a non-alphanumerical character as well. Now, you can set this however you like, but this is just a personal preference and a bit of advice from me in that I like to set some password policies that are pretty strong for my application. So that's just a personal preference. It's up to you. Now, here it's pretty important to let the user know that we have a password policy. So let's head back to our design tab here and let's add a text element underneath this confirm password section here where we're essentially saying, please choose a password that is more than 6 characters and contains a capital letter, a number, and a non-alphanumeric character. Hope that's how you spell it. Now, let's make this a little bit smaller because doesn't need to be super large. Let's add some margins. Let's go 20 to the left and 20 to the right. Let's also go 20 to the bottom. Let's go another 10 to the top as well. Now here we can see that we're just giving the user a little bit of instruction. It should be super clear that they need to choose a pretty complex password. Now, lastly, in this box, because we copied across this button next, we aren't actually saying next. Here we want to say create an account. So we're just going to choose to change the label. We are saying create account here. And this is actually what we are going to use as a trigger to start our new workflow to actually create our account. Now, before I do that, now you may have noticed at the top of my bubble editor here, I've actually got this little red caution symbol, which is actually another really cool feature of Bubble. And that is essentially saying that you have some issues or you have some bugs within your application that you'll need to fix. This is really cool and Bubble's really intuitive in finding these. I'm not exactly sure what it is, so let's take a look and see what they are. If I click these two issues, if I click onto them, it'll tell me what's wrong. Okay. So what I've essentially done and seen here is that because I copied this group across from group details, it's copied across everything, including the conditions. Now, if you recall, the condition for this button was that when this checkbox element isn't clicked, we want it to be a light green and unclickable. Now here, we actually don't have a checkbox, so this won't quite work. That's why if I click this, you'll see that we're given this red missing element warning here. Now, although we don't have this checkbox, this is actually a pretty good reminder, because what experience I want to create here is that when the enter and confirm password inputs aren't the same, we don't want the user to be able to click through. So I'm actually going to create a bit of a different condition here that whenever this value is different from this value, we want this same experience to happen. So we want it to be not clickable and the opacity to be 50%. So let's make that change. Let me get rid of the condition we had there. And let's say that when the element of input passwords value, so the value, not like the actual element itself, the value, the text within it is not the same, we don't have to write the same, is not password confirms value. So when this value is not this value, we want our element to not be clickable and to be the opacity of 50%. So that is essentially just making sure that this enter and our confirm password, these elements are the same, and this functionality of confirming the password is working. It's really, really cool features out of Bubble. I can't get enough of it, guys. This is really cool. So now that we've completed that, let's add our workflow to allow our user to create their account. They've put in all the information, they've confirmed their password. Let's say that whenever this create account button is clicked, we are going to add a workflow. Now I'm going to set that as a trigger whenever button create account is clicked. What we're wanting to do is we are wanting to create the account or sign the user up. So let's do that. Let's choose to add an action. Now we can find that first and foremost under this account. It's the very first option, sign the user up. Now here if we click this, we can choose what we are setting the registration or the user login details to be. So for email, I can choose the value of whatever was in this email address field. So let me show you how to do that. So if I click this button, the element that I'm choosing is the input email address. Email addresses value, so if I were to say shane@buildingwithbubble.com, that is the email that I'm going to sign our user up with. The password will be I can choose either password or password confirm. Let's just choose password confirm here, that's fine. And let's choose the value there. So we are essentially saying that what we're saying here is that whenever our user is going to log in, they're going to input the email address from that input or the password from that password field over there. This is also what we are going to store in our database. We won't see their password, but this is what we're going to store in our Bubble database. What I can also set is this password confirmation checkbox here. So this is essentially where we're saying that we can set the password confirmation. So this is our input password confirm value. So there we go, we have to make sure that they are correct. But there is where we're setting that password confirmation. Now, one quick thing that I wanted to show you, which is pretty cool, is if I head back to my preview, let me just refresh this. I'm just going to create a bit of a test experience. Let's just say our email address is test@test.com. I can put in these name and company name. I will do that a little bit later, but just for this example, let me just show this. Now, what's pretty cool is, as you'll notice, when I put in text into this name section here, you can see it. You can see what the text is and you can see what the values are. Where with this password section, this is really cool. I can choose to put in a password and it actually hides the input, or it hides what I've put in there. I can do the same here, which is really cool. Now, I've actually put in separate passwords, so this is great. So what we set earlier is in check. What this password and confirm password trigger is correct. But I just wanted to show you that really cool bit of functionality in that the text inputs when we set our password, when we define what those passwords fields are hidden. That is great. Now I'm going to head back to my workflow tab and I'm going to actually just complete that experience of signing the user up. So back in my workflow tab, the next thing that I'm going to do, I've already signed the user up using these details. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make changes to that user. Now the reason I wanted to do that is because I have created their email address and I'm storing that. However, I also want to store their name. We've entered a input field for them to put their name in. Let's then go ahead and find a way to save that in our database. Now I don't need to create a new thing because our thing was already created when we signed up our user. But what we're doing here is we are making changes to an existing thing. We are making changes to our user record. They were created here, let's make changes to them here. So to do that, I can either choose to write change, or I can head to my data things here and I can say make changes to a thing or create a new thing. Let's choose to make changes to a thing, and the thing that I'm changing is the current user. I can choose within this current user to change a field. I am choosing to change the name field, and then I'm going to say that what value do I want to be assigned that name field against our current user. And that is the input names value. So the value, the text value, whatever is placed in this name input field here is what I want to save against the current user. Now, I just want to quickly head to my data tab to show what I'm talking about here. Within our user, we have these input fields, or we have these data points. In my app data section, which I briefly showed earlier, we are essentially in the first step, we are creating our new user. We are creating our user with the email address, and then we are changing their name in the second step. So that's just what I briefly wanted to touch on. But now we actually have to also create our company. We also have to create the new company data type here. So because we are linking the company and the user together, that's just simply creating a new company. So let's go ahead and head to my workflow tab. And I'm going to choose to create a new thing. And I'm going to choose to create a new company. Now I choose the company there. I'm going to set a field, and the company's name will be the value of our input company name field. So there we go. So in step one, we are creating the user record. We are then saving the name to that user, and then we are creating a company. Now I have just noticed that there is one additional step that we will have to do. We will have to assign this new company to the user. So this is that relational database point that I was talking about earlier. So because we have our company underneath our user record, we have to then also add that company record here to this user record. Here's the company record with the name and the logo. We then have to link that to this user record. So what I'm actually going to do in my workflow tab, I'm actually going to change step 3 to be step 2, because I'm also going to want to make another change to my user. Now, the reason I've swapped those steps around is because of this reason. I'm going to change another field under my current user. I'm going to change the company field. Now, what I'm going to choose here is I'm going to link the user's company to the company that was created in step 2. Bubble makes this super simple. So I can choose the company to be the result of step 2. So the result of step 2, whatever company was created in step 2, will be what I want to link to my user account in step 3. Again, this is a really cool feature of Bubble that we can, in a single workflow, do multiple things, and we can change multiple records within our database. Now, I'm going to explain what I'm doing here. I'm going to show it in an example shortly, but the last action that I want to add into my workflow is that I want to navigate then to a different page. Whenever the user registers their account, I want to then navigate to a page just so they don't stay on the same page. And that will actually be our settings page, which we are going to do in a few modules time. So let me show you how to do that. I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to navigate to a page that doesn't exist. I'm going to create that page. So with a navigation action in our Bubble workflow, I click to add a new action. I'm going to add a navigation action. And the fourth step in this workflow is I'm going to go to a page. I'm going to navigate to a new page, which will be our settings page. I can choose an existing page. However, I'm going to choose to create a new page, which will be our settings page. Now, I'm not going to clone this from anything. This is just going to be blank. So essentially what we're doing here is that whenever the user record is created, we then want to go to their settings page. The reason we want to do this is because then we will allow a user to change their profile picture or make changes to their account if they made any errors or anything of the like. But that is essentially the workflow that we are creating. Now that we've done all this, let's test this out. Let's test everything to make sure it makes sense. While we're testing, I'm going to refer back to our data tab because I want to show you in real time how all of this is updated. Let's head to our SurveyMonkey clone preview. I'm going to hit refresh. And let's go ahead and create a new account. Let's call this account Shane Test. We're going to call the company name Test Company. We're going to say my email address is Shane at, let's just say test.com. That is fine. Now, Shane Test is going to agree with the terms of use in the privacy notice. And he's going to click next. Before I do that, I'm just going to quickly make a quick note that this name will be saved to the user record. So will this email address. This company name will be saved against the company record, but then that company record will be linked to the user record. So that's that relational database we were talking about. I'm going to then create a password. What I'm first going to do is I'm going to choose a password just to show the fail where it doesn't meet our password policy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say my password for all you guys who don't know is test1. Now this isn't 6 characters and it doesn't contain a non-alphanumerical character. So let's see what happens if I click create account. It won't let me. It says this password is not valid, so I cannot proceed. My account cannot be created. So there we don't have that account password set in place. So I'll click OK here. Now the cool thing is it actually hasn't even triggered that workflow. It's essentially just stopped everything because we didn't set that password policy, because we didn't meet those requirements. It hasn't created our user or our company. It's pretty much just stopped everything, which is a really cool bit of functionality. Now, what happens if I make my password test123 with an exclamation mark and a capital T? That is more than 6 letters. It contains a capital letter, a number, and a non-alphanumerical character, so it meets the requirements. However, it doesn't match the confirm password requirement here, so our button is still grayed out. If I then go ahead and make that the same password here, if I click away, our button is activated. So our password meets the requirements and it is the same as what is in the confirm input here. When I click create, let's see what happens. Hopefully, I'll be taken to our settings page here. So the slug will change to settings. It'll be a blank page. And hopefully we create our user account and our company record. Let's see what happens. So we've created our account. We have successfully navigated to our settings page. It's asked me to save this. No, I don't want to. It's navigated to our settings page, so that's great. Let's head back to our database. It has created our user record, so the user is Shane Test. The company that it has linked to is this unique ID, which is our company here. My name is Shane Test, and my profile picture is the default that we set in the first module of this course. We also head to our company's record here, and we've created our test company, and the logo has been set. Now, if you did want to change how this was seen, because this might be a little bit confusing to find in your database, I'm just going to hit this pencil icon here. And I'm going to choose to change the search field here, and I want to display the name. So for a company, I don't want it to be the unique ID. I want it to be the name of the company. If I hit save, we can see that test company shows up rather than that unique ID. So just a nice way to make our database a little bit nicer and a little bit more known. But the cool part of this is that it is complete. I've successfully created my registration page and signed up my new users. We have a very similar flow or a very similar interactive experience to what is on the SurveyMonkey page. We've had a good introduction to states. I'm really happy with what we've done. Now I want to do one final thing here. I want to add a bit of navigation so that whenever the user is on our marketing page, we want to navigate to this page here, that registration page. So there are 2 sections I want to do this. Let's create a workflow that whenever this sign up free button is clicked, we want to navigate to that registration page. So navigation, we are going to the page of registration, and we are doing the same for this sign up button here. We want to add a workflow so that whenever our user clicks it, they go to the page. They also go to the page of registration. Now let's see this in action. Let me get rid of this settings test here. So we go back to our marketing page. Let's say a new user lands on this page. They want to sign up for free. If I click that, I'm taken through to my registration page. That is fantastic. Let's head to our Notion checklist just to wrap this up and put a nice bow on it. So what we've done, we have set the page state so that we are seeing either the details or the password group. We are hiding and displaying those relevant groups depending on clicking either the next or the back button. We've defined our password policy and confirmed that password in a separate input. We have built the workflow to register an account. We then redirecting to the settings page, and we've added navigation to the registration page from the marketing page. This module is complete. That is super exciting. Well done, guys. Following on from this module, the next section of our course is going to be an extension of what we've just covered. Only in this case, we're going to learn how to create a user login feature. Throughout this module, we're going to build a login page to allow our users to enter their email address and password to securely obtain access and start using our app. Continuing on our journey to build our SurveyMonkey clone, here on our Notion checklist, we see that the next feature we are going to create is a functionality to allow our user to log in to an existing account. Now, we're going to do this by creating a login page for the user to enter their email address and their password to access their account. Now here we will also be creating functionality that if the user has forgotten their password, we're going to allow them to navigate to a new page to enter their email address, be sent an email with a password reset prompt, and then another page where they can enter in their new password and essentially change their login details. Now, I know for me personally, this happens a bit more than I'd like to publicly admit. So it's a cool bit of functionality to add to our application just to make it a complete experience. But to get started, first and foremost, let's head to our bubble editor and let's create our login page. So here on our bubble editor from our index page, we're going to create a brand new page. So to do that, let's head to our drop down and I'm going to select add a new page. This is going to be our login page. And I could clone it from our registration page, which is the one that we just created. However, I'm just going to create this from scratch just to make things a little bit more simple. Now, as usual, the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to ensure that our layout is a column container layout, and that is so that we can add our elements from top to bottom, as is the norm for a lot of applications or websites in the modern age. Now we are again going to add our SurveyMonkey logo, which this time I'm going to actually steal it from my registration page. So I'm going to copy my image, I'm going to head to my Appearance tab and copy this URL here, this link to the image in our database. Let's head to our login page. I'm going to add it as an image onto my page and let's paste that URL there. If you recall, it skews whenever we add it, so let's go ahead and change the aspect ratio to our 44:7 aspect ratio just to make sure that it's the right size that we want it to be. Now again, I'm happy with my 320 pixel width. I'm then going to add in my secondary group, which again, let's just make this a bit visible. Let's make it 400 pixels wide. Let's not make it the width of the content just yet. Let's also make it 400 pixels high, and same story, we will not make it fit to the height of the content so we can see what we're working with. Now what I'm going to do again, this is everything that I did in the previous module. Let's add 20 pixels margin to the top. Let's then group these elements in a column container, and then we will have to adjust the height because our group drops down. Let's make it again a maximum height. Let's just say, let's actually uncheck this box so that it goes full height, and let's make the width a maximum of 400 pixels. Let's uncheck this box. It's a few things that we have to do just to make it the same experience as we saw earlier. Continuing on that journey, we also had to make our background color to be our F7 gray color, which looks like this, which is great. We also have to make this group a flat color of white and add our solid single pixel gray color there. It's starting to look very similar to what we saw on our registration page. Let's also make this center aligned on our page. And let's also finally, let's add our 80 pixels of margin to the top. So this does look very similar to our registration page, which is essentially what we wanted. So I'm happy with that. But now we can make this group, which we are going to call group login, with the right elements, and we're going to make it unique and make it slightly different to what we saw on our registration page. Now, if we take a moment to slide across to the actual SurveyMonkey login page, here you'll see that very similar again to the registration page. We have this makeup of the logo, the white box that we've just created, and then we have this navigation to register an account. If they don't have one, they can go to the sign up page. We have a heading text element to say to the user, we want you to log in here. Here is the input where we will enter their email address. Here's the link where they can navigate to the reset password functionality, and then click next, of course, to input their password. We're going to make this a little bit different. We're not going to have a next button. We're just going to allow the user to enter their email address and their password. And then instead of clicking next, we're going to say login. We're going to allow the user to simply log in. So let's rebuild this in our application. Heading across back to my bubble editor, let's first and foremost, we're going to add our 2 text elements to say, don't have an account, register or login, don't have an account. Here we are saying don't have an account. Let's add our next text element and say sign up. Again, if you recall from the last module, we are going to group these elements in their own row container. Let's add our 5 pixels of margin to the left here, and let's also change this to be our blue link color. Now, if you recall let's just go to our registration page. Let's just copy this code, 007FAA. So let's copy that. Head back to our login page. Let's change this color to be, there we go, 007FA. That looks great. We are then going to align this group to the right of our greater group, that group login there. And let's also add 20 pixels of margin to the top, 20 to the right, 20 to the left. Let's add 20 to the bottom, and let's also uncheck this box to fit the height to the content. And let's make it a minimum width. Actually, no, we are checking the box to fit the height of the content. We're making it a minimum width of 0 so that the group fits nicely around our text elements there. So there we have step 1 complete. I'm now going to choose to add my heading, and that heading is simply going to say login. This is going to be 24 pixels, so nice and large. And we're also going to set this 20 pixels away from the left, 20 to the right, and 20 to the bottom. Away from our border or away from any other elements, so it looks fine. And then I'm going to add my email and my password input elements. So here we are calling this email. Let's make this bold. Sorry guys, I am flying through this, but it's all stuff that we've done before, so shouldn't be too hard to follow along. Here we are adding our input element, which is our input element. Let's call this input email. As I said, very important to name your elements. Under our layouts tab, we are going to choose to uncheck the fixed width. We're going to make it a minimum width of 0 and a maximum width of infinite so that it's as large or as small as is required. We are also going to add 20 pixels to the left, 20 to the right, and 10 to the bottom. Let's copy these 2 elements here. We're going to copy and we're going to paste these below. This is going to be our input password, and this is going to say password as well, this heading. So just before we add in our login button, the one bit of navigation that I quickly want to add while it's on my mind actually is this sign up navigation here. So whenever this sign up text is clicked, we want to allow our user to go to a page. We want to go to the page that we created in the last module, which was registration. And you know what? While I'm here, I just realized that we didn't add that in for our registration page. So because it wasn't created yet, we hadn't created our login page. So while we're here, let's create the navigation that whenever the user clicks this login bit of text, they navigate to our login page. So we're saying go to page, login. While we're here, let's just actually test this just to make sure that this works. So let's go to our preview. We open up a new page. Here we are on our registration page. If I click this login button, hopefully we go to our login page, and there we have it. Well done. Now the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to add our login button and just make sure that that all works fine. we're going to do that first, and then we're going to add our forgot password prompt as well. So just a quick note that we're going to, again, skip a step, sorry. We are going to add our button, and this button will say log in. Let's add some margin. We'll say 20 to the left, 20 to the right, and 20 to the bottom. I'm not going to add any to the top just yet because we're going to add that forgot password bit of text first. Let's firstly choose to make it full width. And there we go, we have our login button here. So what I now want to do, I'm going to actually build that functionality or that workflow to log our user in just while we're here. So if I click this login button and I choose to add a workflow, whenever that button login is clicked, I want to log our user in. So to do that, I'm going to navigate under this account tab to the log the user in. The email address that I want to log the user in with is, of course, the input emails value. So the value that is in this email input field here will be the email address that they will log in with. And the password is, as I'm sure you can expect, the value that is in the input password field just there. Now, once the user logs in, we are wanting to navigate them to a page which we haven't created just yet either. So let's choose to go to a page that we are going to create while we're here. Let's create a page. We are going to navigate them to our dashboard page. We're just going to leave this blank for now. We're going to create this from scratch. But whenever they have logged in, we want them to go to our dashboard page. We're going to create this page in a few modules time, but for now, let's just ensure that they go to that dashboard page. So what I want to do now is take the opportunity to just test this and just to make sure that this functionality has been built as well. Now, if I hit refresh, here we can see our login button added. But what I want to do is I actually want to just show you what happens if the user does not put in the correct email address, or sorry, the correct password. Actually, no, I will say email address. Let's say what happens is if they type in an email address that there isn't an account for. So if they type in shaneisthebest.com at test and the password of there, if they click login, it will say that we couldn't find an account with those login credentials. So that's just a way that Bubble is ensuring that we are saying to the user, you have to have an account before you log in. If you don't have an account, go to the sign up page. But let's see what happens if we do log in with an account that we have. So that is shane@test.com. And let's see what happens if we put in the wrong password. So if we say just the wrong password, if we go like this, we can say the same thing, we didn't find an account with those login credentials. So again, just a way that Bubble verifies that we are using the correct information and pre-builds in this functionality to block the user or to say, you haven't put in the right information, go sign up. So let's see what happens if I do put in the right information. If I put in the right password, if I click login, hopefully I'll go to my dashboard page, which I have done. That is fantastic. So as you can see, we have created our login functionality. That is great. We can check that box off. Let's actually just do that. Let's head to our Notion checklist. We have created our login page and we have redirected to the dashboard page. Now, as you can see, the next item on our checklist is to just close another loop that we opened a few modules ago. We are going to redirect our users from the index page, from this marketing homepage, and allow them to access the login page. So if they already have an account, we don't want them to sign up and create a new account. We want to add a workflow that whenever that login text is clicked, we want to add a workflow, and we want them to navigate to a page, and that page is this login page that we have just created. So we have closed that loop. We'll take this opportunity to test this out as well. We might as well. So they're on the marketing homepage, they click login, and they are taken to this login page. So just wanted to briefly throw that in there. We've completed another item. That is great work. So the next thing that we're going to add is a text element where we are going to say to the user, if you've forgotten your password, click this button. So let's do that. Let's head to our Bubble editor. I'm going to go to my login page here, and let's add in a text element in between our password input and the login button. And here we are going to simply say forgot password, ? Now, again, let's make this our blue link color, which of course is the color code 007FAA. I'm going to say that this is blue. This is that color code that we're just going to paste there. Let's also just add some margin as always. We're adding 20 to the left, 20 to the right. Let's also add 10 to the top rather, and 20 to the bottom. So there we go. We've added this forgot password text here, and that looks okay. And that fits in nicely with our design. Now, if you've ever forgotten your password, which I do a lot, you will know what we're going to see next. So what we are going to do here is that whenever this forgot password text is clicked, we are going to create a new workflow. We are going to navigate to a new page. We are going to navigate to a page that doesn't exist yet. It is going to be new. We are going to create a new page, which is called forgot_pw. Oh, again, not gorgot. Oh, come on. Forgot pw. Now, this time, let's actually clone this from the login page just so that we can skip a few steps. Let's hit create and let's go to this new page, which is called forgot pw. Now, if I head back to my design tab and we go to our forgot pw page here, it does look very similar to our login page because it's the exact same. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of some of these elements just to make it a bit new and a bit unique. So we're going to keep that SurveyMonkey logo, which is fine. Let's get rid of this group here. For this group's login, let's start to add some of this text, some of these items that you can imagine that is on a normal forgot password page. So first and foremost, I'm going to add 20 pixels of margin to my heading. Let's just simply here say, forgot password. Did you forget it? It's okay, it happens, that's fine. Now what we're going to do, let's get rid of this password because they don't know it. They don't know the password that they are resetting. Let's also get rid of the element and say forgot password. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to enter some instruction. Let's add a text element above our email element here. And essentially we are saying, you have forgotten your password. Please enter your email address and we will send you a password reset prompt. Okay, let's add some margin just to make that look a little bit nicer. We are adding 20 pixels to the left, 20 to the right. Let's also add 20 to the bottom, just so that it fits a little bit nicely. While we're here, let's also change this login button to rather say reset password. And let's also add 10 pixels of margin to the top here just to make it space a bit nicer. And let's also, for this group, let's choose to fit the height to the content just so that there is a nice bit of visual spacing here and it looks nice and snug, which is a lot nicer. So let's take a look at what we're asking our user to do here. If they have forgotten their password, we are saying, please enter your email address and we will send you a password reset prompt. Now this is a big promise, but luckily, again, Bubble makes this super simple to put into reality. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a workflow that whenever the user enters their email address and clicks reset password, they'll receive an email to reset their password, just as we have promised. So let me add a workflow here. So whenever button reset password is clicked, I am editing a workflow. Let me just quickly say that because I cloned this page, it did include the workflows. So let's get rid of that and let's add a new workflow. So whenever reset password is clicked, let's add a workflow. What we are doing, this is actually really easy. Bubble makes this, again, super simple. I've said this a few times. This is how good of a tool Bubble is. We are sending a password reset email. So underneath this account tab, we are sending a password reset email to the user. So the email to reset is the input email value. So whatever value is put in this email input here is where we are sending the email to, and that email is going to say this: your password reset request. Hello, someone, hopefully you, submitted a request to reset your password. If it wasn't you, please ignore this message. If it was you, you can reset your password at the below link. Now here you can make some adjustments. So let's just say your password reset request for SurveyMonkey. And let's simply say here the SurveyMonkey team. Now obviously you would input your own information here, but this is just a nice way to add some personalization to your email. Now what I want to do is I want to show you what this looks like. So I'm going to test this out for you. But before I do that, let me just explain what is going to happen next. So the user will be on this page, this forgot password page. They will enter their email address, they will click to reset the password, they will be sent an email, and in that email, it will contain a link. Now, the link is going to be inclusive of a code or something unique, just to say that this is a valid request and it is for this user. Bubble takes care of all of that. But whenever the user clicks that link, they will go to this page, which, thank you, Bubble, has already been created. Reset_PW. Bubble does this for us automatically, creates this page whenever a new app is created. Bubble is the best. It already creates this reset your password page. It has this input to set their new password and confirm the new password. Whenever the user clicks confirm, we do have to create the workflow so that we can navigate to the right location. But awesome thing here is that Bubble does this for us automatically. We can make changes to this page if we like. So let's say, for example, we want to change it to our F7 color. There we go. We have to also just quickly make this none, but there we can go. We can make it the same style. We can make it the same feel as the rest of our site. But the awesome thing here is that Bubble does this for us automatically. So just wanted to briefly touch on that workflow, that whenever that reset password email link is clicked, it goes to this page, which is really cool. We do want our users to then, let's actually set this workflow in place that whenever the button confirm is clicked, we want to, while we're here, we want to change the password for this user, which is under this reset password item here. So the password, we are going to say that it is the input stars value, and the confirmation is the second input stars value. So that's just the new password for the user. We are resetting the password there, and we are navigating to the page. Let's go back to our login page. So whenever the user resets their password, we want them to then go back to the login page so that they can confirm that it is correct and they can log in with their new correct details. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take the time from my forgot password page. I'm going to preview this and I'm actually going to follow this workflow with my own personal email just to show you guys what is seen. So check back in with me in 1 second and I'll show you what I've done. Okay, so I've just entered my email address and I'm just going to get rid of it. And I'm going to scroll across to my personal email and just show that this is what the email looks like. I'm in Gmail. So I have been sent this email saying your password reset request from SurveyMonkey. I've misspelled monkey, sorry. But here we have the text that we put in. So someone, hopefully you, submitted a request to reset your password. If it was you, reset it in the below link, the SurveyMonkey team. If I click this button, let's see what happens. So here I am visited in that page that we just saw, and let me change my password. So if I go here and select my new password, hopefully when I click confirm, I'm sent back to my navigation, to my login page rather. So if I hit confirm, hopefully it creates my new account for me, or rather creates my new password, sorry. And I'm able to log in with this new password. I'm not going to test it here because I've done it. But what I did notice is that, let's say for example, if I enter this email address and I hit, if I hit this reset password button, nothing really happens. I want to let the user know that an email has been sent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an alert or something to say that whenever this reset password button is clicked and after the email has been sent, we want to say to the user that your password reset link has been sent. Please check back here or something like that. So let's do this. Let's head back to Bubble. Let's go to our editor. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a pop-up. Now to do that, I simply head to my container section and I'm going to add a pop-up to my page. Now, as you can see, when we add a pop-up, it creates this group and grays out the rest of our page, which is actually a really cool bit of functionality. Bubble does this automatically, which is great. The pop-up is a reset PW notification. We're essentially saying that the email has been sent. We are notifying the user. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some text to simply say that your email, your password reset email has been sent. Reset email has been sent. Sorry about my spelling. Email has been sent. Oops. Oh man. I need to go back to school. Your password email has been sent. Please check your inbox and click the link. You might want to say something in there like, please check your spam or something of the like, but we're just going to say this for now and just give you creative freedom to do your own thing. Now I'm going to adjust some sizing of my pop-up. Let's say I want the maximum width to be 300 pixels. That's fine. Let's also add some margin here. Let's say 20 pixels at the top, 20 at the bottom, 20 at the left, 20 at the right. And let's also, what I might actually do also, just to give this some nice styling, let's also add a cool icon. So I'm going to add an icon above this text. Let's see what happens if I type in mail. So let's choose this icon here, which essentially means new email, which is just something that looks pretty nice. Let's choose to make this 100 pixels by 100 pixels to make this a bit larger. I'm then going to center align this here, and let's also add 20 pixels of margin to the top. Let's actually add 50 pixels to the top there. So as you can see, that looks pretty nice. Let's also just make this center aligned as well, this text center aligned. And that looks pretty nice. So this is just a notification to say to the user that their password reset email has been sent. Go to your inbox and follow the prompts there. So just another little bit of function there. And we're going to add to that workflow that whenever that password reset button is clicked, we are sending the password reset email, and we are also showing the pop-up. We are showing the element called pop-up reset password notification. So again, just closing that loop and just making sure the experience is really nice for our users. And so now that we've added that functionality, let's go back to my Notion checklist and see how we've gone. So we have sent the password reset prompt and allowed the user to set a new password in that pre-built reset password page, which is really cool. We have redirected our users to the login page. We have completed our login to an existing account section of our course. Throughout the next module, I'm going to teach you exactly how you can create a settings page within your Survey Builder app. So that way, people can make changes to their account and personalize their experience. Within this module, we're going to build out the settings page for our Survey Builder app. Here, we'll be displaying the current user's information whenever they log in, and also be configuring some workflows to allow our users to save their changes to their user record in the database. Continuing to work our way down a list of features for our SurveyMonkey clone build, the next page we are going to create is our settings page. Now the purpose of our settings page is to allow our users to first see and then make changes to their user or company records within their database. Here we are going to build in a feature where the user can see their existing records as well as make changes to them and save them to their database. This page is going to be accessed by a new user straight away after they register a new account, or if a logged in user wants to go in and make changes to their profile. Let's get started on this build. I'm going to head across into my bubble editor. And if you recall, in the last module, we did already create our settings page. So here we have our settings page, which as usual is a blank canvas. Now, as normal, the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my settings blank canvas here. I'm going to head to my layout tab and I'm going to choose to make this a column container layout so that as we add elements, they're going to be stacked from top to bottom. Now for our login and registrations pages, we did save the background to be this gray color that you see. However, once the user is logged in, I want them to see a different background, which is just simply this white color. So we're going to leave this as is. We are also going to allow our users to see a bit of a different header to what they're used to. So on the index page or the marketing homepage, they did see this white header, which had the logo and had the login and sign up buttons here. However, on our settings page and throughout the rest of our logged in experience, we're going to see a gray header. So I'm going to do that by adding my first group to this page. As normal, I'm going to choose not to make it to fit width to the content. I'm going to give it a minimum width of 0 and a maximum width of infinite so that it is large or as small as it requires to be, dependent on the browser or the device that our user is visiting our app on. And I'm also going to change the height, just for now, just to be 80 pixels. I'm also quickly just going to rename this group header. And I'm also going to change the background color of this group to be a flat color. And I'm going to choose this color, which is of the code 3D4650. Now this is directly off the SurveyMonkey site and is what the current header color is at the time of this recording. So you can use this code if you'd like it to be the same as what's on the SurveyMonkey application at the moment. Now here we are also going to add another image to the top left-hand side of our header. However, it's not going to be the logo that we've created a few times before or added to our page a few times before. Instead, it is going to be this icon, this SurveyMonkey icon, which is just essentially, if you can just see it, the outline or the shape of the monkey without the text. So we don't need to display the entire logo. We just need to show that little icon. So let me go ahead and add that now. So here we go. I've added it to my image section here. Now, as you can see, this is quite large. So let me head to my layout tab. I'm going to choose to keep this aspect ratio fixed. And let me just choose the width of this element. Let's only make it, let's make it 80 pixels wide as well. So it sits a nice size in relation to our header. What I'm also going to do, let's simply add, let's go 10 pixels of margin to the top here, 10 to the bottom. We're going to go 20 to the left and 20 to the right, just so that it fits nicely within the grander scheme of our header. If I wanted, I could also choose to center align everything from a vertical perspective in the container, which just makes it nice and centered from a vertical perspective. Now, next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add another section to my header where I'm going to display the email address and the icon of the current logged in user. And the reason that I want to do this is so that when my users navigate to this page or to any page on our application, they just simply know that they're logged in. There's a way to tell the user that this is the email address and the profile photo of the person who is currently logged in. So to do that, similar to what we've done before, what I'm going to first and foremost do is make this a row container layout. And then I'm going to add, first and foremost, I'm going to add a text element. And this is going to be the current user's email address. And I'm also going to add an image element. So let me firstly just do that before I go ahead and change those values. So I'm going to add an image element here. Let me just quickly change the sizing of it just while we're working with it. There's going to be a 1-to-1 ratio. Let's also make this, let's make this 50 pixels, just so that we know what we're working with. And then what I'm going to do, similar to what we did in the previous module, I'm going to choose to group these two elements. I'm going to group them in a row container. And the reason that I'm going to do that is so that here I essentially just have two elements, two groups, and I'm going to choose to select the group header, and my container alignment is going to be space between. And if you recall, the reason we do that is because as our header grows and shrinks, we want the space in between them to be dynamic. We want them to change according to the browser that the current user is logged in on. So at the moment, I just wanted to do that so that I could explain my alignments, but you still can't quite see what I'm working with here. So before I speak any further, let me first and foremost, I'm going to change the appearance of my font here so it's white. And I'm also going to just center align it vertically, just so that it sits nicely within my group. What I'm also going to do with my image, I'm going to, before I go ahead and choose what I want the image to be, I'm going to choose to add a border around it, which will be a white border. And I'm also going to choose to make this a circle. So the way that I'm going to do that, I'm going to add a solid line border. I'm going to make that border white. And with this roundness option here, I can essentially choose the roundness of the corners of my box or my group. So if you've ever worked with web design or anything of the like, you'll know that if I set the roundness to be 100, it will be a circle. So for my border, I want my corners to be a roundness of 100 pixels, which will make it a circle. Now, as you can see, that looks nice. However, there is a bit of a spacing issue here. So I'm going to add, let's just go 5 pixels of margin to my text element to the right, just to set it off there a little bit. And for my group, which is called group B, let's call this group logged in user. Let's add 20 pixels of margin to the right, 20 to the left. Let's also add, what did I add here? I added 10 to the top and 20 to the bottom. So let me do that as well. Let's go 10 to the bottom and 10 to the top. And again, if I wanted to, I could vertically align this in the center of my group as well. Now, you may be asking, what are we going to display in this text element and this image element? We can't set this to be static text. So even though this is a text box, we can't say edit me. We want to essentially show the current user's email address. Now this does present a challenge because we have to change this text dependent on the user who is logged in. This will be different for every single user. This will have to be dynamic. Now, dynamic data is another really cool feature of Bubble. We can change this text to be anything we like as long as it's within our database, and we can be specific here when we show data that is specific to our logged in user. So how do I do that? So for this text element, I don't want to set what the text is. Instead, I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to choose this blue ribbon and I'm going to insert dynamic data. Now here is where I can pull something from our database or an API or somewhere else in our app. What I want to show here, I want to show a data source of the current user, and I want to show the current user's email address. So what this does, Bubble observes who is currently logged into our application, and it takes their email address and will show it in this text section here. Now I can do the same thing for my profile picture. Here, where it says dynamic image, I can choose to insert dynamic data. I can choose to display the current user's profile photo. Now this will, same thing as what we saw earlier, this will pull in the current user's profile photo from our database and display it in our UI here. Now with images, there is one thing that I quickly want to do. Let's say, for example, one user uploads an image that is in landscape format, where another inserts something that is vertical. Regardless of whatever size whatever the dimensions or whatever the type of image a user uploads, we want them to essentially see the same thing. So what I'm going to choose here is I'm going to choose to resize to fit the dimensions by cropping, which essentially means if there's an image that is, let's say 600 pixels wide by 100 pixels tall, it'll make it a square. It is going to resize to fit the dimensions of that image to fit within this image here. So let me just set that in. This is ImGix processing, which is a really cool, which is a really cool addition to Bubble. Now to show this in action, I'm going to go to my preview. Actually, what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to enter my preview via a different channel. Let me head to my data tab, and I'm going to head here to all users. And here I can choose to run a preview as a specific user. I can choose to view my app as if I am a specific user. So here I'm going to run a preview as this Shane test person that I have created before. So if I click this run as, SurveyMonkey clone is going to pull my information from the database and show that here. So as you can see, here is the dynamic data in action. Here we have the email address of this user, as well as their profile photo, which is just the default for now. We will allow our users to make changes to this so that it's specific to their whatever profile photo they have aligned with their user record. But this is just a cool way to just show who the current logged in user is and get their information and make it a personalized experience for them. Now, while we're here, I might also just show this responsive tabs to just show the space between function that we set in earlier. As our page width changes, our app still looks really nice. So that's just a nice little addition that we've done there. Now, let me make a quick note about headers. We are going to use this header in a few places within our application. So we want to make sure that this is the same across a bunch of different pages. So what we'll be doing is we'll be copying and pasting this into the right pages whenever it's needed. So what we're going to do first and foremost is we're going to add some navigation to our header. And the first one is that whenever this icon is clicked, universally, everyone sort of knows that whenever you click an icon, it will take them back to the home page. So let's add some navigation that whenever this icon is clicked, we want to navigate the user to our dashboard. Now we haven't made the dashboard just yet, but essentially we want the user to go back to their dashboard. Let's say if they're in the middle of a survey build and we want them to go back to the dashboard, if they click this icon, they will go back there. When it comes to our settings page, in most cases, across most apps that we see nowadays, if the user clicks on the top right hand corner where their profile information is, whether that be the profile photo or the email address, that bit of text, they will navigate back to their settings page. So what we've done here is that I've selected this group, so either the image or the text or any of the space in here, and we're going to add a workflow to navigate the user to the settings page. So now when we copy this this header to all of our other pages in our application, say for example on their dashboard page, if they click this group here, they will be taken to the settings page and vice versa. Now that is just some pretty standard functionality for applications. You can add a few more navigation elements here if you like. However, for this use case and for this build, I'm just going to add those two. So now that that's done, let's get started on building our actual settings page. So what I'm going to do first and foremost, I'm going to add a text element onto my page, and this is going to be my section header. Here, I'm going to write your details. And underneath this bit of text will be all of our inputs and all of our headings and the like to show the information of the current user that is logged in. So as usual, as this is a heading, let's make this slightly larger text. So we'll make this 24 pixels. We'll also choose to add some margin here. Let's go 20 at the top, 20 to the left, 20 to the right. And let's just go 10 pixels at the bottom for now. Now what we want to do next, just a cool little bit of styling that I did see in a SurveyMonkey page once upon a time, is just underneath this heading, I want to add a little line, just a little bit of green branding that we've seen a few times before. You'll see what I mean when I actually build this. So what I want to do next, as I want to add a little thin line under this heading, I'm going to choose to add a shape. Now, bubble adding shapes is really cool. You can choose a bunch of different ones with different sizes and the like. But what I want to create here is just a thin line to sit underneath my heading. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to choose to make this a width of 250 pixels wide. However, my height, I only want this to be 2 pixels. Now, when I choose 2 pixels, it'll just show this nice line. I'm going to head to my appearance tab. I'm going to change the shape of this, the color of this. As you can see at the moment, it is my primary color with this color code. However, it is only 10% opacity. So if I change that to be 100% opacity, it is a nicer green color. Now I'm also just going to add some margin. Let's add 20 pixels to the left. Might as well add 20 to the right. Don't need to add any at the top. And let's add 20 to the bottom here as well. So here you can see just a nice bit of styling. We have our header and then a line. And now underneath here is where we will place our users' information and allow them the option to make changes to it if they would like. So let's get started on that. Let me first add a text element, which will be, I'm going to say here, your name. This is because we are going to display an element which displays the current user's name and allow them to make changes to it. Before I do that, let me head to my layout tab. I'm going to add 20 pixels to the left, 20 to the right. I'm only going to add 10 pixels of margin to the bottom. Oops, that was the top. Let's add 20 pixels of margin to the bottom. And I'm going to just bold this as well as it is the heading for an element. And the next element that I'm going to add, I am going to add an input field. I'm going to add a single line input. However, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. Let's call this input name. Now, what you might be thinking is, if I'm a user, I've already logged in, I already know my name. Why would I need to enter my name again? Well, what we can do with input fields, which is a really cool feature, is we can set initial content. Now, if you can imagine a user is viewing this page and they're already logged in, they already know who they are. We want to display their name as initial content. So we can do that using dynamic data. So for example, if I head to this initial content section, and if I again click this blue ribbon, insert dynamic data, the dynamic data that I want to display as initial content is the current user's name. Now, if I click away here, let me head to my layout tab and just add some margin just so that it looks cool. 20 pixels to the left. Let's actually make this a little bit wider. Let's make this 400. Actually, let's make this not fixed width. We're going to make it a minimum width of 0 and a maximum width of 400 pixels, just in case someone has a really long name. But at the same time, we are also making it responsive if it's smaller than that. So we're just making sure that we're ticking a few boxes there. Let's also, while we're here, add 20 pixels margin to the left. Let's also add 10 pixels of margin to the bottom, Sorry, I've done that a couple of times now. 10 pixels of margin to the bottom. I'm going to press pause and I'm going to head to my preview app. Let me hit refresh and show what I mean. So although this element is an input element, it's already displaying my current name. It is pulling this from the database and showing this in this input element as initial content, which is really cool. I know what my current name is in my database, so if I want to change it to chain testing, I can do that there. That's pretty cool. So we're going to touch on this a little bit more shortly, but I'm just heading back to my bubble editor. The next thing that I'm going to want to add is to allow the user to display their email address. So let's head with our text element. I'm going to add another text element here. We're going to call this email address. Now, as usual, I'm going to add some styling. Let's bold this. Let's also give it 20 pixels of margin to the left, 20 to the right, and 10 to the bottom. You guys know the drill. Now, with email addresses, just personally, I don't like the user to be able to change this. So rather than displaying this as an input element, I'm simply going to display this as a text element. So let's drag another text element here. I'm going to, again, just add 20 pixels of margin to the left and 20 to the right. Now, if I want to add a little bit of spacing, a little bit of additional spacing to make it look similar to what is in the your name input field here, I can add some padding rather than some margin. So if I click on this input element here, I can see that there is some padding added to this element. And briefly on padding, margin is space added to the outside of an element, outside of a box, for example. However, padding is spacing added to the inside. So if you can see this light gray box around here, you can see that there is 6 pixels of margin added, 6 pixels of padding rather added here. So if I choose to add 6 pixels of padding to the top and 6 to the bottom, and as you can see, it is added some gray borders around here, some gray spacing, some gray padding, similar to what we've seen here. We can also see that the height of this input element is also 48 pixels, so let's just make that consistent as well. We're not going to fit to the height of the content. We can make this fixed height, and that will be 48 pixels. So that just makes the spacing similar, and just keeps it consistent from our app perspective. Now, as mentioned, I do not want our users to be able to make changes here. So what I'm going to do for this text, I'm going to choose to display dynamic data, and that will be the current user's email address. Now, if I head back to my preview, let's see what this looks like. I should see my email address there, and that looks fine. Let me next add my last input field here, which will be my profile picture. Now, just quickly, I'm just going to go ahead and just add that heading, profile picture. I'm going to, again, make this bold. I'm going to add 20 pixels of margin to the left and 20 to the right. I can see here that I didn't add any pixels of margin to the bottom of my email address, so let me just add 10 to the top just to make sure the spacing's all fine. And there we go, I have my text in the right place there. Now here, I'm going to allow my user to change their profile picture, which might seem like a bit of a task. It might seem pretty difficult. How can I allow them to do an input of an image element? Surely Bubble has something like this pre-built. They do. Let me head to my input forms here. I'm going to get my head out of the way briefly and reveal the picture uploader input form. So let me drag that onto my page. And here we can see it is simply, at the moment, it's a square that says click to upload an image. Now, before we test this, I'm going to add some styling as usual. Let me just add, first and foremost, 20 pixels of margin to the left, 20 to the right, and I'm also going to add 10 to the top. And here I'm also going to add, let's add 20 to the bottom as well here. So if you can imagine, the user is going to land on this. They will see this profile picture box where they will be prompted to upload an image. Let's see this in action. So if I click my clone here, if I click my preview tab and hit refresh, I can first and foremost just see this input element here where I can click it and upload an image. However, you may have picked up that here we have a slight issue, sort of, an issue that's easily fixed. Similar to what we've done for our name and our email address fields here, we want to display dynamic data and we want to display that as initial content because we want to pull and let the user know what is currently in the database according to their record. So let me do that. I'm going to head to my bubble editor, and here with my profile picture uploader element, there isn't an option to add some initial content per se, but I can choose to display here a dynamic image. And the dynamic image that you may have guessed that I want to show is the current user's profile photo. Now, similar to what I've done for the header here, I want to process the image with Imgix, and I want to resize to fit the dimensions by cropping. Now what I also just want to do while I'm here, I also want to make this a circle as well. So let's head down to my border styles. And once again, I'm going to choose a roundness of 100 pixels to make this a circle. Now let's take a look at this once more. Let me head to my preview. I'm going to click refresh and hopefully it displays here this avatar, and there it has. Well done, that looks great. Now, if I were a user and if I wanted to update my profile picture, all I'd have to do is click this element here and it would actually bring up my local desktop or laptop's Finder, or if you're on a Windows, their File Explorer, and be able to upload a different profile picture or an image file for that profile picture, which is really cool. So as you can see, we have the ability to update the user's name in this text input and their profile picture in this image input section here, which is pretty cool. The thing that we now need to do is we need to save these changes to our database if they're made by a user. So what we're next going to do is we are going to add a button here to simply say update details. And this is a bit of a confirmation or a bit of a trigger to save these inputs as new records in our user's database. So let me head back to my bubble editor and I'm going to add here a button. Let's add a button here, and the button is going to be labeled update details. Now let me, as usual, I'm going to add some margins, go 20 to the left, 20 to the right, and 20 to the bottom here. And let's see how it looks. It fits nicely on our page, that is fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to add a workflow to start whenever this button is clicked. Now to do that, I'm going to click add workflow. And let's see here. So whenever button update details is clicked, what do we want to do? We don't want to essentially create anything new. We want to make changes to our current user's record. So let's head down to data, and I want to make changes to a thing. The thing that I want to change is the current user. I don't want to change their name or their profile here. I want to change their entire record, and I will choose to change their field by clicking this button here. So what am I going to change? Let's change their name. And the reason I'm going to change their name is because they have entered a new value in the input name field, a new value. So whatever change they have made in this field here is what is going to be saved to our database. If they haven't made any changes, because we are displaying initial content, it is going to be the same. So that is fine there. We are also going to do the same thing for the profile photo. So the profile photo field, which we see in our data here, so the profile photo data field here, we are going to change that to be the image uploader, the picture uploader, picture uploaders A's. Guys, let me just quickly go and just rename this picture uploader profile photo. If I can spell, profile photo. Now back in my workflow tab, I'm going to choose to display, or I'm going to choose whatever value is in the profile photo picture uploader element, the value to be the new profile photo of the user. Now what we have here is a single step. We are just simply making changes to the user whenever the update button is clicked, whenever this update details button is clicked. However, if you can imagine, this update details button will be clicked and then nothing will really happen. We don't want the user to navigate anywhere else in case they want to test their changes, but we want to simply save these to the user's record and we want to let them know that that has been successful. So what we're going to do is we are going to add an alert. Now let me head to my design tab, and I'm going to do that by selecting this alert visual element here. Now, if I display it, I can drag it anywhere and I can choose to position the alert at the bottom. The reason I want to do that is because at the moment you'll notice that it has just been placed anywhere on the page and has actually dropped down the other elements. So if I add it to the top here and choose this position alert at the top, it places it right up there. This might be a little bit confusing, but what I'm going to do, you'll understand why. I'm going to add, let's add 80 pixels of margin to the top here so that it sits underneath my header. Now the reason I want to do that is because I want to display this in the white section. I want to display this so that it's nice and visible, but I don't want to throw anything else down. I simply just want to display this without impacting the rest of these elements here. So that's why I've chosen to first and foremost position it at the top, but then give it a margin of 80 so that it sits below our header. And now that I've done that, let me just make some quick styling changes. I want the background color to be a nice solid green. So let's choose to make this 100 pixels. 100 opacity rather for our primary color. And let's choose the font here to be white so that we can see it nice and clearly. Now the alert that I want it to say, let's say changes saved. So that means that, let's add an exclamation mark just to make it a bit more of a statement. This essentially means that the user will now know that the changes and the updates that they have made to their user record have been saved to the database. Now we have to add that to our workflow. So let's here show an alert as the next step. Whenever the button is clicked and the changes have been saved, we want to save this. We want to alert the user rather that these changes have been made. So here, if I just type in the word alert, we can show a message in an alert box. Now the element is alert changes saved. We know that that is what is said. We are showing that message of alert changes saved. We are actually showing it here for, it's an animation. What we're seeing here is animation. So it's going to spend 500 milliseconds fading in. It is going to display and hold for 2000 milliseconds and is going to fade out for 500 milliseconds, which means half a second in, 2 second hold, half a second out. Let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to head to my preview and I'm going to hit refresh. I'm going to make a slight change. Let's just call my name Shane Testing. And I'm also going to upload a custom profile photo. So let me do that now. So here we've made that update. This picture of me with short hair on a yellow background. If I click update, what's going to happen? This changes saved alert has been shown. And as we can see, my profile picture has been updated on this end. Let's see if it has updated in my user record. I'll head to my data tab. And as we can see, if I hit refresh here, it might just take a little second. Okay, so I've refreshed and here we can see that my name is now Shane Testing and my profile photo is that image that I just uploaded. So we can see that update workflow has been successful and is working, which is really cool. And now I'm going to do the same for my company details. So I've made all these changes and saved all these changes for my personal details. Let me do the same for my company details. Now what I'm going to do once again is I'm going to actually select all of these elements. I can do that by dragging this box here and I'm going to choose to hit Control C or Command C and Command V depending on whatever device you're on. So what I've done here is I've pasted it below the information that I've already put here. However, for some reason, Bubble does this very often. It throws them out of order, which is kind of frustrating. So just a quick note that you probably will have to make these changes. But while you're doing that, you can take that opportunity to change each of the individual elements because as you know, whenever an element is copied, it copies it exactly, or if it's a duplicate, it calls it picture uploader profile copy or something of the like. So let's make all of these changes now. For the text of your details, I'm going to drag that to the top of this section here. I'm going to instead say company details. I'm going to then add my line underneath and I'm then going to say in this one, this text is going to say company name. Now the company name, I'm going to drag this input element above here. And as we can see, we're starting to build this out. It's starting to look pretty nice. Actually, everything's been sorted, so that looks great. However, we're still going to make some changes. So the first one that we're going to change is the title of this input element. This input element is called company name. We don't have to say copy, we can get rid of that. And the initial content that we're going to display here is the current users, not their name. We want to display their company's name. Now, what you've just seen is something pretty cool. I've said this a few times. Now, this is where the relational database of Bubble comes in real handy. I'm not displaying something akin to my user record. I'm displaying something aligned with the company record. And the way that I've done that through this relational database is I have essentially seen within my user record, I'm looking at my company and I'm referring to something there and I'm saying the current user's company's name. We're going to use these relational fields and these relational dynamic data a lot within our course. However, that is just something that is really cool. We are using the current users, not anything associated with them. We are associating their company's name. So we're displaying that as initial data. We don't need to show the address of the email or that actual field. Let's rename this to be logo, and I'm on a roll here because I want to show you again what I've just done for the company. So here we are not showing the current user's profile photo. We are instead showing the current user's company's their logo. So similarly, we are not showing anything to do with the current user. We are showing the current user's company's logo. So that's where you can start to really get some cool dynamic information and some relational data in there. Again, just one final touch. Let's process this with Imgix and resize to fit dimensions by cropping. And there we go. Now, before I go ahead and test this, let me add my workflow to update these details and save them to my database. So I'm going to add a workflow, this new workflow of when update details is clicked. But quick note, sorry, I'm just going to quickly just make one final change. Here, I'm going to rename this to be update user details, and this one be update company details, because as you would have just seen, we couldn't tell the difference between the two in our workflow tab. Where now we can, so that when update company details is clicked, when update users details is clicked, this one's going to happen. So we are going to make changes to a thing. We are not making changes to the current user, we're making changes to the current user's company. So that is the data type that we are changing. And we are changing two fields here. We are changing the company's name to be whatever is in the input company name field, the value. And then finally, we are changing the logo of the company to be the value, or as you noticed, I've not named this again. I haven't updated the name, the picture uploaded this. That's why I have to do it. Logo, picture uploader logo. Okay, we're back. And we are changing the current company's logo to be the image uploaded to the picture uploader logo value. There we go. Okay. Now that we have completed that, lastly, also we're just making sure that we are also showing that alert. We are showing the alert to be that same one that we saw earlier. That is fine. So we're making the changes to the company, and then we are showing the message in the alert box. Now let me make these changes here. Let me preview this for you guys just to wrap this all up and show that we are making the appropriate changes. So as we can see, it has loaded in the initial content, whatever data is associated with the current user's record. So we're displaying the test company. Let's again change this to testing company. And I'm going to take a moment to update the logo. So give me a second. So I've just uploaded this picture of a laptop as my logo. Let me hit update details. My changes saved alert has been shown. If I head back to my database, to my data tab for my development version, and there we go. We have our name as testing company and the logo as that laptop image that I just updated. We have successfully updated our database and made our changes for our users record. So there we have our settings page. We've made those changes and we've made that an interactive workflow. Let me head back to my Notion checklist. We have displayed the initial content on our settings page. We have built the workflow to upload the personal details and the company details, and we have completed the build of our settings page. Well done. And just like that, that is all the time we have for this video today. As you can see, we've been building for literally hours, and there's still so many features that I need to uncover in as much detail as possible. If you wanted to watch the rest of my Survey Builder app course, I'd recommend hitting the link in the description of this video, so that way you can get access to the entire course right now. Now, while that full course is going to cost you money, I'm confident that it's going to save you months of time having to learn how to rebuild all of the individual features from scratch. So if you really want to launch your app as quickly as possible, I definitely recommend checking it out. At this point in time, there's still so many features that we need to uncover. We still need to publish our live survey page to the web and create a survey link that our users can send out to their audience. We then need to collect responses for our survey without putting too much pressure on our database, as well as create the seamless experience respondents will have on our survey page. We will also need to then build out the workflows to save our respondents' answers to the database and then display those responses in a results page so that our users can identify key insights from their survey. I truly wasn't lying when I said there's still so many features that we need to walk through. If you wanted to stay up to date with any additional Bubble resources we share on this channel, I'd always recommend hitting that subscribe button. So that way you can be the first to know whenever the Building with Bubble team drops a new video. For now though, I just wanted to say a massive thank you for watching up to this point of our tutorial today, and I wish you all the best on your own no-code journey.